lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
Matt Williams got a brilliant start from the third row of the grid.
He's gone, he's hit him, he's straight off at the chase.
A half-second lead over the centering car in the background.
He has it. Oh, he's round on the last lap.
There's a massive accident.
Goes to the inside, what a move, what a move.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the final round of the Automobilista Australia GT3 World Series for 2020. It's the 2 hours of the Glen, Watkins Glen, if you're playing along at home. The shortened version of the name being the Glen. That's just what everybody refers to it as. And pretty much as soon as you say those two words, everybody in the motorsport world knows what you're talking about. 2 hours is going to be a huge test for both man and machine tonight. But the important thing is that the championships are pretty much decided. Top three are locked in to those finishing positions. They cannot go any higher or cannot go any lower. So for the first time in the 5 seasons we've had for the endurance discipline here at AMS Oz, there's no championship pressure, which is a blessing for those guys, but there's still a number of drivers down the table that have got it all to play for. So the boys at the top end have nothing to lose, and the guys behind them have everything to gain. We'll go through all those in just a few moments' time. Welcome aboard to Outworld Broadcasting's coverage. My name's Steve DeVries, and I'm joined by the gentlemen who have occupied this booth for the better part of the last 4 months. Josh Bagsy Bags and Michael the Floodman Zalavari. Gents, good evening.
Evening, Nether. Good to be here for the final round of our GT3 Championship. Final day of the financial year, final round for this championship. It's all working out nicely, so the drivers will be able to file the taxes on their winnings they get from this.
That's a very nice way to put it.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Basie. Good evening, Nether. Yeah, it's been a really, really cool season, and to come to the finale now, we've got a lot of loose ends already tied away, as you mentioned, the championships for both drivers and teams locked away, but there's still plenty to play for tonight, and I'm excited to watch just the final race of the season.
Yeah, final race of the season at a track we've never been to before, and I don't know about you two, but it took me probably the better part of a week to come down from the high in the way we finished the Monza race 2 weeks ago. I pinch myself that that's how that race panned out, given everything that has happened at Monza in the past. To go 90 minutes flag to flag and end up in a fuel mileage race was absolutely incredible.
Oh yeah, I definitely felt the same thing. I had commentary the next night on the debut of the ATCC series for TCAC, and it was so flat because I just used all that energy in the previous night's race. So it was an absolutely astonishing finish and a great way for Bolger to take what in the end was his debut AMS Oz crown. Yeah,
and that's a good way to segue this in here. Bagsy, let's have a look at the point standings coming into tonight's proceedings. And well, Steve Bolger, he can't be beat. He's the champion-elect, only got to get through tonight, and he's already got the title sewn up. Top 3 on the standings, though, all nicely squealed away, but there's still a bit to play for down the order.
Yeah, there definitely is. Although 2 of the people down there in 4th and 5th, Xeris and Peter Savage, neither of them here tonight, so it means that Ozrob, who I did see earlier, and who is currently in 2nd place, can very well jump into 4th place in the championship overall as a Silver Cup driver. So there'll be something to work out for. And he's got Brendan Ross just behind him as well. And even Lime Mitch down there in 10th could jump up several positions if he gets a good result here today. Everyone really in that top 12 who's here tonight has the potential to bump themselves a long way up the championship. And that could affect what they get put into in terms of classes in the next season of GT3. So there is still everything to play for here.
Absolutely. And so you look at people, you said Brendan Ross and Ozrob are the 2 that are in the contention there. They're 25 points for a race win. So unfortunately, Lewis Wedding is 30 points in arrears of Ozrob. If it was 30 points for a race win and he were to win it, that would have been adjudged Lewis Wedding, given the fact he had a win on the calendar. But alas, it's only 25 points for the race win. So still a little bit to go on there, but Osrob's looking pretty handy at the moment with a very, very nice 14-point buffer over Aaron Thomas, who is absent tonight from what I have been reading in the chat. And then Lime Mitch then becomes the nearest competitor. Michael, does that mean we see some team orders tonight, perhaps?
Possibly, especially with Devonish and Bolger already with the overall championship. It would be nice for Gravel Shed Racing to grab for the Gold Cup championship as well as the Silver Cup championship. So if there is a position later on the race, you could see maybe a swap around. But of course, that all depends on what happens with the other cars around them. If for example, Lime Mitch is way out ahead, then there's not really much either of them can do to stop that. And Lime Mitch has been putting in a fair amount of laps in this BMW, and the BMW should be strong here given the track characteristics. But both Osrob and Lime Mitch are at the top of timing tonight so far, second and fourth. So it could be very close for Silver Cup honours and sorting out the top 10 in the championship tonight.
There's actually the second place through to sixth currently, as practice is just with about 7 3/4 minutes winding down. There is about 2/10 separating second through sixth. So that's Osrob, Brennan Ross, Lime Mitch, Steve Bolger and Lewis Wedding. Will Devonish well out in front. I think he's probably gone on to some qualifying runs, just judging by the times that he's doing at the minute. But bodes well, could have a nice little finish, not only just to tonight's proceedings, but the Silver Cup as well, with some of the drivers at the pointy end looking to leapfrog their way up the order. Team standings, completely different matter. Gravel Shed Racing well and truly clear first place, sewn up. Wedding Crashers Racing second place, well and truly sewn up. Third, though, Michael, is still in dispute.
Yeah, 1 point between Team Antara by Loose Sim Sport and BC Racing. Unfortunately, we made mention earlier that Peter Savage is not racing tonight, so we've had to twist Lewis Wedding's arm a little bit to see if he jump in and race tonight, because if he doesn't, he might be losing that third place for Team Antara in the team championship. On the other hand, though, BC Racing aren't without their own problems. Brendan Foley are reporting a game crashing issue, a game freezing issue during the week. So there's a full likelihood that he might not even complete this race. Remember, it's a 2-hour race. So these sort of things that might be, a random incident once or twice, all of a sudden get much more likely the longer these races go on. So it could be that even if Team Antara don't have any races tonight, they might be able to escape with third in the championship. It'll all depend on how the technical side of things holds up tonight.
Yeah, Brenton Foley's been having those issues for a couple of weeks now, not just in AMSOs, but in ARW. It actually cost him first place in the last round of the TCR championship that wound up last Tuesday. In actual fact, it cost him the championship overall because he ended up having that freeze off the road at turn 6 at Sandown, straight into the wall, and it was pretty much his first non-finish of the year. And it came at the most critical time in the championship and ended up losing it. So he's been having an awful time with that. They pay points down to 15th, so even if a couple of the top runners sort of drop off the radar, the only other driver for BC Racing, Bagsy, that's out there tonight is Cracker, currently in 14th on the practice standings. But all it takes is for a little something to happen at the top of the order, and all of that can very, very quickly change.
And yeah, really all they need is a couple of points if Lewis Wedding doesn't get a result. So just being in the race is probably going to be enough to manage to jump into that third place in the team championship, which will be very well done by them. It's been a bit hard fought between them, and they've had, I think, overall less drivers in the field compared to Loose Sim Sports, if I am correct in saying that.
Possibly, I think you might be right there. The other thing we've got to keep in mind too is with Steve Burko running around tonight, he's actually ditched the Lexus for the second of the Loose Sim Sport Mercedes AMGs. Now, I'm not sure how the point situation is going to work out for that, given it's so late in the racing season. He may accrue points for his own championship and his own team name instead of accruing that for Team Antara by Loose Sim Sport. We'll have to keep an eye on that one a bit later on once the racing is over for the night. That's yet to be determined the Lexus did get a little bit of a power boost at the last round, but he's still not entirely happy with it.
Just wanted to query something there. I just looking at the timing sheets now. Berko to me looks like he's in the car guy Acura, the NSX.
Oh, sorry, you're right. He has two. You're right. He
yeah.
has two. He's now switched and got that Acura in there too. I thought for some reason something was a bit strange, but although as we see, there's a bit of something silly going on in the pit lane at the moment.
Yeah, I believe
you are correct.
happened,
Sorry.
something happened in the game that appeared to reload some of the cars and threw several of them into the air. So that's a interesting little quirk there.
Yeah, I did see. There's a Brenton Foley that got moved up in the air. Looks like there was a Will Devonish that went up in the air as well. We've just temporarily lost our pictures there for a minute, but yeah, something weird happened, and just I believe I know what's happening there. They're actually having the drivers briefing at the end of the practice session before they get into qualifying. That'll give us a bit of time to have a look at this circuit in a little bit of detail. So for those of you who have not seen it before, Watkins Glen International. Tonight it's the full layout, the boot chicane as they call it. The chicane for the little bus stop chicane just after the conclusion of Sector 1 at the top of the screen there. And then the boot, well, because it looks like a boot, going down there at the bottom right-hand corner of the circuit. This circuit comes actually in 4 different layouts. It's got chicane without the boot, chicane with the boot, and boot, no chicane, and then, yeah, the other way as well. So you can get it any way you like it here. We've raced a couple of different revisions across a number of different series, none in AMS Oz, so there's no track records here. It's a bit of a unique circuit, this one, Bagsy. We've run this in ARW in the DRM series. It was an absolute handful in those cars, but it looks like it's a little bit kinder to GT3 machinery, save for a couple of bumps and a few awkward spots.
Yeah, I wasn't able to participate in the ARW DRM one that was here, but I did get to watch it, and those cars were definitely a handful. These cars, obviously being high downforce and high power, are much better to get around here. Unless, of course, you ask Michael, in which case there is a certain bump in Sector 2 that I think disagrees with him slightly.
I think that might be in Sector 3, actually.
Sorry, it is Sector 3.
We'll come back to that.
But it is definitely a track where you can get into the groove. And when you're in the groove, it works. And if you're out the groove, it does not work. So, and it may make overtaking difficult here tonight because you really want to follow that racing line. And things like the chicane, it's not so much of an overtaking zone because it's such a fast chicane. So you've really got to try and set yourself up, really follow someone, pressure them and hope for a mistake more than being able to make proactive overtaking moves unless they bugger up coming out of the corner. So they're probably being told in the driver's briefing now, we don't want to see any dive bombing into some of these high-speed corners because all that's going to do is take 2 cars out of the race or at least damage them significantly, and no one's going to be happy with that, and penalties will be doled out with vigour, I believe.
Yeah, and there are plenty of run-off zones as well. Since turn 1, as you just saw, as we're replaying for a second time now, our onboard lap, there's plenty of run-off zone at the chicanes, in the 3rd sector of the lap as well. Now, this place, Michael, is a bit of a patchwork quilt, as you said a little bit earlier offline. It has been resurfaced in real life in recent years. This one is sort of the patchwork quilt version. We can see there's little bits of concrete strip that have been put into place over the course of time. The bump, though, comes up out of the 3rd last turn. So that's turn 13. You come around that sort of infield, sort of 270-degree turn, roughly. You come out of Sector 2, turn right, go up to turn 13, which is a left-hander, and there's a really big nasty bump just in the middle of the traction zone. We'll see it as we come up to it in a couple of minutes, but it's quite unnerving when it unsettles the car.
Yeah, and it's something that I've had a bunch of trouble with in my practice running around here in preparation for tonight. It's just as the boot meets the main circuit as well.
Yeah.
So you've got that combination of the track coming back together, the concrete apron, and just as you want to bring up the power, that's where the concrete ends. Yeah,
right here now, as we're watching on the broadcast now, right there, just at that point there, just a little nasty bump just on the wrong part of the circuit.
Yeah, and so it's on a track like this where flow is the name of the game, little bumps like that can really have a massive effect on your lap time. It's interesting what Bagsy said as well about there not being too many true overtaking zones. He's exactly right. There's no real big stops here either. So even the run into turn 1 or the bus stop chicane, both of those are taken in the top end of 3rd gear or 4th gear. So there's not really any big stops that really enable you to put a dive down the inside of someone. So flow is going to be the name of the game here. And I think also tire wear and fuel. We were talking to a few of the drivers earlier tonight, and a few of them are really concerned with making enough fuel to get through the race, and a few of the front runners as well. So that could become a talking point in about 2.5 hours' time.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. A few drivers definitely complaining about the fuel situation. The lap count, as you saw back on the graphic there, was somewhere in the realm of about 66 to 71 laps, and that's got to factor in they've got to stop 3 times tonight. Same situation as Bathurst. At the bare minimum, you've got to get 3 stops in to get home in a 2-hour race. Tanks last roughly about 30-35 minutes, and 3 stops will be what's required. But it is going to be marginal. You do tend to blow through a fair bit of fuel here, especially keeping the flow up. It's not like Monza, though, where Monza you had on the power for long periods of time, then some really hard stops, and then having to get the traction zone going to boost up all that horsepower, get it back up to maximum speed again before you only have to just jam on the anchors again. The flow here is very, very important. I think the worst turn we've seen, I think he only taken about possibly second. Some guys will probably even take it in third gear at some of the 180-degree hairpins, if you can call them that. They're actually pretty well wide, and some of them, the banking actually helps a lot as well.
Yeah, and the part of the reason that this track flows so much is that all these corners are constant radius, which means they don't get narrower and they don't get wider, so you're on the limit of the traction the entire way through the corner, and the radius is so large, so even those tighter corners, if you look at the toe, the right hand end of the boot, that corner there, it's quite a wide radius. So that means that you're not really slowing down as much as you would say at the chicane at Monza. It's not a slow corner. It's uphill. You're on the limit of traction that entire time. So tires are going to be a big issue. And as we mentioned, fuel. And because you don't have those big stops, that means that the aerodynamic effect isn't actually all that helpful, because you want to be using the downforce at the front of the car, and you can't really do that behind another car. So flow, getting out of behind other cars and keeping the fuel usage as low as you can, they're going to be big issues tonight, and it's going to be a fascinating race. We could see a surprise result for this last race of the season.
Yeah, I reckon we could.
Something you were saying when you touched on fuel saving, it's probably almost more difficult to save fuel here than it was at Monza, and we saw how much difficulty people had with fuel at Monza, because there's no, like you're saying, hard stops where in Monza you can just let off the throttle earlier, let the car coast in a bit. You can just use your momentum to get through those chicanes. Whereas here, you can let off the throttle, but you're losing momentum through that whole corner. Because it's such a fast corner, you're going to be losing a lot more time in comparison up the next straight. So, and it's going to knock out your flow that little bit because you're not braking exactly where you were. You're not turning in exactly as hard as you were last time when you were fully on it. So it could be that we see people making mistakes due to their fuel saving as well, and not being able to do it as effectively.
Yeah. Well, here's a bit of a surprise. We've gone into qualifying. The first man that's actually going to set a flying lap is Brian Walsh. So that's a surprise in its own self. Normally we see the likes of Brenton Foley, Steve Bolger, all those sorts of guys at the top end of the field trying to get the laps churned out and setting the early benchmark. Brian Walsh getting out there and beating them all to the punch. Good on you, Walshy.
Yeah, it's good to see Walshy out there as he has a bit of a moment through the chicane and throws it away.
Yeah, that'll render him a curb strike.
Him up.
Yeah, I was about to say, that'll probably render him a curb strike for that one as well. You got it all crossed up. We'll just see if he registers a Sector 2 time. He registered a Sector 1 time because that came through just before he cut the track there. And his first Sector time was a 30.848. I mean, it was half a second slower than the next man who went through the Sector 1 timing loop in Matt Williams, but that's beside the point. The point is he's out there setting the first of the flying laps. Live Racers will give us an update probably in about 30 seconds or so as to how he's tracking. It's gone through the Sector 2 split and it's registered a time. The question becomes whether or not it's actually placed it on the timing screen, and indeed it has. So he didn't get a track cut for that one. So he's been a good boy, managed to arrest the speed enough to not trigger the track warnings, and he will have the honour of setting the opening lap.
Interesting thing that we've got going on at the moment is Ozrob and Steve Bolger are both have both come out line astern and are seeing their laps. So wondering if this is a bit of teamwork with providing a slipstream, or if this is just both happen to go out at the same time.
I think there might be some strategy in that one, as Walshy stops the clocks at a 151.6, immediately surpassed by Matt Williams' 146.9. Let's go down the order. Will Devenish is one of the next men to set another lap. He'll be looking for another win under his belt. We heard in the chat just before racing got underway tonight, in that Monza race, he got to the pits with 0.1 of a litre left in the car for that splash and dash right at the very end. So just goes to show you how some people manage to not make their fuel economy work, yet Bolger, who stopped well and truly before people like Will Devenish did, managed to get home on the smell of an oily rag.
Yeah, that finish at Monza 2 weeks ago was something phenomenal I've not ever really seen in sports cars like that before. And Devenish, he got so very, very close to nabbing that one and only just managed to get in the pits. In fact, he's jumped to the top of the timesheets already with a 44.2, which I think is the quickest, not quite the quickest time of the server that we've had up through the week, the GT3 permanent server, as he just almost has a bit of contact with John McDonald coming down the chute. So he's certainly looking to maybe exile some of the demons that he's had from this season. You think about some of the opportunities that he's had that have gone to waste. Monza definitely being one of them. Austria as well, you could say, was one that got away from him. Hopefully, he's definitely looking to atone for some of those mistakes that he's made throughout the season.
The one that he'll rue the most is going to be the one at Istanbul, where through no fault of his own, he had that issue with the button plate on the wheels. So he basically couldn't change gears, he couldn't do pit strategy, he couldn't do anything. The car was stuck in second gear and he had to retire it. That's ultimately what really decided the championship, or put it into a position where he was going to struggle and needed everything to go his way for the remaining 2 rounds. And unfortunately for Monza, it didn't go according to the script. But he's out there looking for another result. And, oh, geez, look at that for a margin. Back-to-back laps in a 144.2. And the best lap that he has set throughout practice during the week was 144.181. So we're not far away from that in its own right.
And he's already gone 0.2 up on his best time from tonight as well. So he's really got, I don't know how many attempts he took for that fastest lap, but he's definitely got into a groove here very quickly in qualifying.
Walshy just ahead of him on track here as well. As John McDonald's had a
John
big
McDonald.
accident
Big
back
moment
there. Massive
That's
moment.
not gone well.
Just look at the aggression
Brian
through.
Walsh has held up his teammate a little bit here.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Oh,
a little
yeah,
bit.
A lot of a bit now. That lap is cactus.
Yeah, that lap is gone. The lap is gone. What was the sector 1 time for Devenish? It was actually a 29.599.
Yeah.
It was purple.
It was purple by 0.2 as well. 0.193 of a second up on the best sector 1. And now Walshy has finally gotten out of the way.
Yeah, he does, but the lap will be gone.
That is a demonstration of what we were talking about before. This track, it doesn't really give you a lot of opportunities to pass, especially if a car is close in speed to you. So you kind of have to manufacture a passing opportunity by coming out of the corners quicker than dive bombing someone. So in the end, Walshy did step out of the way, and it's affected about 7/10 of Will's lap this time around. As we just see them tip over that bump onto the normal circuit.
Yeah, let's have a bit of a look back through the order now. Surprise packet, Brendan Ross up into P2. That's a nice result for him. And we did mention that he's one of those drivers that could leap up the order in the point standings if he was to have a good night. The other ones being Ozrob and Lime Mitch. And during practice, those guys, as we said, were all within 2/10 of each other. And you could put Lewis Wedding to that equation as well. He hasn't set a lap just yet. We expect he's on a flying lap from what our timing screen is showing us at the moment.
Just started a flying lap.
Just looking at all the people having traffic issues at the moment, because for the most part, all of the cars, this is a relatively long track. It's a 5.5 kilometre track, give or take 100 metres. And there's a whole sector basically empty at any one given time because everyone's so cramped up together.
That seems pretty typical for GT3 racing, and most racing as well. You get a large amount of cars in one area of the circuit and the rest of it's completely bare. Yeah, as you said, Sector 3 at the moment it's pretty well empty, but because everyone else is in Sector 1 and heading into the boot. Just funny how that works out, doesn't it?
You think qualifying, they might try and have a look at where people are before heading out. It hasn't worked out so well for some people. The people who are best placed at the moment are Will Devonish, although he's just had a very, very big moment.
Yeah,
there.
and he was up
So that's
too.
going to
He was
pay to that lap. But he's decided, bugger that, I'm going to refuel, retire, have another go.
And Bolger's now moved ahead. Oh, and Ozrob too. They've both now moved ahead of Brendan Ross in the last half a minute or so as well, and going out again. Geez, Rossi with a huge amount of aggression at the opening part of the bus stop chicane as well. Been remarkable to see how much control drivers have over that first part of the chicane too. I'm surprised it's not registering a track cut with the amount of curb that some of these guys are taking, really pushing the limits as hard as they can.
You can actually take quite a fair bit of that entry curb without getting a track cut, I found doing practice. The big worry for me when I was doing laps, and I'm sure a lot of other people will echo, is on the exit of corners, especially at the bus stop when you're coming back onto the outer loop. And also the exit of the penultimate corner and the first corner. Those are the sections that really encourage you to use a lot of racetrack. But if you step four wheels off, that's where you get pinged. So you might see drivers on the second half of the race, especially as Rossi just tags the wall there. He just hit that bump. That we were talking about earlier. So you might see drivers later on in the race taking a very wide line to go all the way over the curb and rejoin a bit slower as in an effort to not hit that track cut limit, which is extended for tonight. It's a 2-hour race, so they get an extra one up their sleeve, but you wouldn't want to be relying on that one in a dogfight 20 minutes from the end.
There you go. Only 2 men now yet to set a lap time. Now we've had a couple of drivers jump into the server in qualifying as well. So Luke Joyner came in late. Greg Turra has also joined. So Turra and this man, Lewis Wedding, are the only two yet to set a lap time, although we're hoping Lewis is going to change that in the next little bit. It looks like he got pinged for a track violation on his previous attempt, so this is his second attempt. 29.9 through the middle sector. Half a second down on the pole lap to the second sector. That's not too bad. That's going to be good for about a second or third row start if he can keep this together.
That's potentially third if he picks up pace a little bit, although he's not troubled the apex there whatsoever and got very, very close to that wall.
And Burko behind him in that Acura as well, which he has changed to for this one.
That Acura.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
Yeah, if we jump on and have a look at Burko's car after Lewis finishes his lap, I can give you a little bit of explanation of what that livery is as
Lewis
Wedding jumps into sixth.
Yeah, so he lost a little bit of time there. So this is Steve Burko. As we go ahead here, Michael, the stand is all yours.
So the Car Guy Racing team is a racing team out of Japan. So they run very loud fluoro yellow liveries, as we can see there. Run in the Asian Blank Pain series, Blank Pain GT Asia, which is now SRO GT Asia, and in the Asian Le Mans series, they actually took up a invite to go to Le Mans. It was 2 years ago, and actually were quite impressive. Didn't have high hopes for them. They ended up finishing just off the podium in GTEM. So a really prestigious race team for Japan, and a really cool livery. I do quite like that fluoro yellow livery. It really strikes you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it stands out. You can definitely see it coming before you hear it. And it's one of a couple of guest cars that were in the pack for drivers coming in during the season that want to run around here or there. I know, Michael, you've taken a bit of an impartial liking to the Audi R8, which is not represented by anybody in the main series, but it is there as the guest car. That's the one you seem to potter around in on a race night before you jump in the commentary box.
Someone's got to run an Audi. It's a GT3 series. How do you run a GT3 series without an Audi? It's impossible.
Although with all the changes Audi are making to their racing programs, and Porsche for that matter as well, you'd be forgiven for wondering if they're actually going to continue in the likes of a GT3.
Just to interrupt that chain of thought there, we've got the first 49 of the session, Will Devonish, a 43.9. So he's half a second up on the next lap time of Steve Bolger at the moment. The first lap time in the 43s. That's mental pace from Devonish. And he was talking earlier tonight, just while setting up the server, that he really enjoys this track and it seems to suit his driving style. And we can see he's got that Lamborghini absolutely rooted to the ground as he goes through the inner and outer loops onto the chute that takes you off to the boot. And again, he's a further 2/10 up on this lap as well. So we could be seeing something absolutely remarkable from Devonish in a second.
Yeah, he's right on it here, Bagsy. Let's keep an eye on him. He's, as I said, done the first 43 of the night. A little bit wide of a couple of corners here, so again, really pushing those limits. Let's see what the second split says.
He's just coming up to it now, and he is almost 2 tenths up. So Will Devonish is absolutely on fire. If you're following live races, you'll see his little number 1 icon flashing purple with some flames coming out of it to accurately describe how fired this lap currently is. It's done really well. He gets as close to that wall as you possibly can. The maximum amount of, or the least amount of deviation through there, as close as you can get. Pulls it through the final corner. This pit entry that he's just driven through is going to be very interesting. So people will be slowing down and sticking to that line.
43.5.
4 tenths.
Wow.
43.5. That's incredible.
Wow.
He's just demolished his own time, and he's demolished everyone else. He's a second ahead of his nearest rival in Bolger.
Yeah,
That is, with 20 seconds left of the session, he's going to go park and have a cigarette.
Oh.
I think we need one as well after watching that.
I think we need a stiff drink. Let's have a look at how everybody else is situated, though. Let's forget about Will for the minute. Bolger and Brendan Ross are
in
pretty
fact,
close.
Bolger in the first sector was only 5 thousandths down on that time Will Devonish just set. So that could be very interesting if he's able to maintain it through this lap.
All right, we'll have a bit of a keep an eye on Bolger as we go through the order here. So, Rob and Lime, Mitch and Brenton Foley and Lewis Wedding and Luke Joyner, Noah Turret. Look at all the separations here, guys. There's like a tenth and a half separating like most of the running order here. Although Bolger's had a bit of a mid-corner moment coming out of the bottom end of the boot through that 180-degree right hand hairpin.
Yep.
And the
Through
timing
the toe,
and the timing split disagrees with him. So he's up on his own PB, but lost an awful amount of time in that mid-corner wiggle.
He's going to need a pretty crazy final sector here. We did see that Devonish gained 2 tenths. I don't think Bolger's going to quite get that, but he's going to give it his all here.
Yeah, and I don't think Greg Tara is actually going... No, Greg Tara's in the pits, so he won't set a lap. So Tara's going to start rear of tail in the Porsche, and that sort of echoes on from what happened last time out at Monza. Oh, big wallop of the wall. And that echoes what happened last time out at Monza, where people that were coming back into the server late were not permitted to qualify. So that's now been extended, and Tara unfortunately doesn't get a chance to set a time. So Bolger probably insulates himself from Brennan Ross, who's actually gone to the pits anyway. Now we're looking at who's the next man to cross the line is Lewis Wedding in 7th.
Yeah, top 6 are in the pits at the moment, so Wedding's got a chance to jump up as he comes through the final corner. Little snaky on entry at the front, but gets the power down nicely, uses all the road in the exit. He'll cross the line to finish his qualifying session. Improves on his time and jumps up to the 3rd row of the grid, just next to Brendan Foley.
Yeah, and an improvement from Rhodey behind by a couple of tenths as well moves him up from the back row to the second to back row. So he was in the tow there behind Lewis Wedding, just off shot, and a PB for Hans Brunswick as well on the final lap too. Now, I don't think that moved him up or it may have moved him 1 spot. I think it moved him up ahead of Noah Tara just then. So late change on the order for that.
He split Noah Turret and Luke Joyner a gap of just 0.07 of a second, just like in between the pair of them.
Look at that. So the lap times if you're playing at home, so Brunswick was a 1 minute 45 189, and he managed to slot in between a 1 minute 45 160 and a 145 236. And I mean, you can also probably throw Termo's Aston Martin in there at a 145 263. So he pretty much just put his time right in the middle of a spot where it probably wasn't supposed to go.
Very close times. It's been typical of what we've been seeing GT3 this season and so far. Well, I mean, so far it's the last round of the season. But great balanced performance across the field, great balance of skill across the field. And we've got like 3 separate races almost. We've got top 4 or 5, the Devonishes, the Bolgers, the Weddings, who will really have that top battle sorted out. And then we've got that mid-pack, which could be anyone in any given race. And then even at the tail end of the field, the battles between Rhodey, Brian Walsh, those sort of guys, it gives you a lot of intrigue throughout the race. So 2 hours tonight. A very technical circuit. You got to be very patient with the flow here and patient passing people, patient passing traffic, which is going to be something that we're going to have to look at in the race tonight. It's going to be a great race.
Sure is.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Just on qualifying, quick summary. top three: Will Devenish, Steve Bolger, Brendan Ross. Steve Bolger changing it at the end so that it wasn't quite as big a margin. Still 6/10 from Will Devenish.
Still pretty big,
Steve
though.
Bolger. It's a big gap, and Bolger knocked a couple tenths off his personal best at the end there. So it was closer to 8/10 before that. And a Lamborghini 1, 2, 3. 3 different teams, but all Lamborghinis at the front. So, and once again, Will Devenish just set up that Lamborghini exactly how he likes it. And he's able to... It seems that no matter what the track is, Will Devenish has been able to be there or thereabouts and get that car just so well fine-tuned. He seems to know exactly how to tweak it to suit whatever track he's going to.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Have we had a... Sorry, Nathan. Have we had a non-Lamborghini pole position this season?
I'm trying to recall if we haven't. I think the only one that possibly it may have been might have been Lewis Wedding at Silverstone, but I know he won that race. But I'm pretty sure the Lamborghini started on pole on that one. I'm just trying to remember backwards.
What was Pete Savage driving in Monza?
He was driving the Mercedes, and also he drove the Mercedes at the Valencia round as well.
So we have had a few then, but it just seems that it's been a Lamborghini whitewash almost. It's been terrifying how strong they are.
And Xeris at Donington as well.
Yeah, correct. So I think that's where the streak, because Xeris did have, you're right, Xeris did have the pole position for Donington. And that was a race that I was personally a little bit disappointed in how that panned out. The safety car really upset the balance there, and that's what instituted some of the stuff we've had to do behind the scenes at AMS Oz to get a little bit more confidence back into things with the live stewarding. But that race was Xeris's to win. He was well and truly in control of that race until that safety car landed, and just got absolutely screwed by how that all panned out. No different to what happened to Liam Spencer at Bathurst as well. Did everything right and then ended up getting the wrong end of the stick by no fault of their own.
Yeah, that's racing sometimes, unfortunately. We've done the best that we can with some things we put in place with the safety car and the live stewarding to try and prevent those things from happening. But ultimately, sometimes you just get screwed. And unfortunately for Xeris at Donington, he just got screwed out of a possible win. And same for Liam Spencer at Bathurst, got screwed out of a great strategy call. Hopefully we don't have anything like that tonight. I think we have sacrificed our live stewards so that way Lewis Wedding can race. So fingers, arms, legs, toes, and eyes crossed that nothing goes wrong. But it's a 2-hour race at a track that's difficult to pass on. What could possibly happen?
Yeah, that's right. It might be a bit processional, but we do see that it might come down to a little bit of pit strategy as well. You just never know. In terms of the racing here at AMS Oz, this is actually one of the busiest weeks we've had in a very, very long time. It's the very first time we've had 5 nights of racing across 5 consecutive nights, and on top of that, 4 live streams to go along with it, this one being the first of them. It started last night with the Track Day Challenge, which was held over for a week due to a few people not being able to make the time slot. So that moved from when we originally had it planned to yesterday. So that was race number 1. Tonight is GT3, race number 2 for the night and the first live stream. In the upcoming events, this is the remainder of the week. So ATCC Group A is tomorrow night to kickstart the new financial year, July 1. So Michael, the Floodman Zalavari, will be joining Kiwi Chris Riddell for that one over on the Endurance Chat Media YouTube channel. Then we come back here to Outworld Broadcasting for Supercars on Thursday night. That is the next round of the series at Townsville, the Reed Park Street Circuit. That's the longer endurance format. So we ditch the sprint format and we move on to the longer distance format for a little bit. Super 2 on Friday night, broadcast over on the Loose 89, or as Lewis Wedding now likes to call it, the Loose Sim Sport Network. That is from Phillip Island. Personal favourite of mine. I spend enough time down there as it is, and it's a wonderful track. And that will be the 4th of the live streams for the week. And then there's a really big lull. There's actually nothing next week, surprisingly. And then we get hooked into the GT3 Sprint Series, which is the second of the GT3 series we're running this year. And that starts at Okayama on the 14th of July. And that's what the calendar, if you're missing the broadcast last week, that is what the calendar for the Sprint Series looks like. So 6 rounds over the course of 3 months, 2 30-minute races a night, no safety cars, and no pit stops. Michael, what do you think about that?
What a lineup! What a lineup! I'm really excited to see these cars ported into more of a sprint format. I do love my endurance racing, make no doubt about that. But there is something about a sprint format that really just drives up the crazy. So a few really cool circuits. I think it's the AMS Oz debut at the Bend as well, which as my local circuit, my version of your Phillip Island Nether. I'm really excited to finally see that ported over to a virtual setting, and then a series finale at Road Atlanta. That's the stuff that dreams are made of. So I'm super excited to see GT3 cars again, and we're going to go straight into it. This is 2 weeks away.
Correct, 2 weeks away. So drivers have not got very much opportunity, Bagsy, to change cars or change liveries if they want to. But there's a few circuits on there that we're definitely looking forward to. Some we've been to, 1 or 2 we've been to before. A couple we've done some testing with, and well, there's one nickname we have for Road Atlanta. I think in ARW Madbirds coined it the pork chop.
Yeah,
I think that's just purely because of the way that it looks.
It does look like a pork chop when viewed from a certain angle. The thing is, though, with all these tracks, barring, 4 out of the 6 tracks, Suzuka and Phillip Island, we've seen a lot of racing out across a lot of different series, but the other 4, there's been very little at all. And I'm not sure which version of Bahrain we're using, if we're using the... Are we using the endurance
Please
layout?
don't be using the endurance
it's
layout.
the Grand Prix layout. It is confirmed
Grand
it's the
Prix
Grand Prix
layout?
layout.
There we go. I was not sure because no one seems to like the endurance layout of Bahrain.
Why would you do the endurance layout of Bahrain? There is nothing good about adding that loop onto it. It just destroys a beautiful section of track to start with, and then the flow of that entire second sector. Like, why? Oh, okay, sorry.
I appear to have touched on a sore spot here, so we're going to move swiftly on to the race, which is about to start.
Sorry, guys.
The talk about that can be saved for round 5, which is going to be on the 8th of September. So if you want to hear, we'll probably have a segment for Michael ranting about how he hates the endurance layout at Bahrain, just to fill in some time somewhere.
We'll just call it Floody Soapbox. I'll stand on it often enough.
Yeah, we will have a look at that a bit later on in the year. And to bring you up to speed too, Michael, it'll be the second race that we have had at the Bend here in AMS Oz, both of them having been this year. The first one was TCR a little bit earlier in the year. I think it was in April. The GT3s will go there. And then we've also got the final for supercars there in December. I think it's December 12th from memory. That'll be where we finish the season. So 3 events there. And also Road Atlanta comes up in Porsche Cup a bit later on as well. That's kicking off in August as well. And that series is officially a lockout, guys. So if you were looking to participate in the Porsche Cup, the field is locked out. I think we had 33 or 34 registrations. We had a couple of guys drop out because it's moved on to a Tuesday night time slot. But still, even if we get 25 Porsche cars a night, that is still a huge field. Speaking of a huge field, 19 GT3 cars set to tackle 2 hours of the Glen, and Bagsy's going to have a look at them for us.
Thank you, Nether. As you said, 120 minutes of Watkins Glen lay ahead of us. It's going to be a test for the drivers. It's going to be a test for their machines. It's going to be a test for us here in the commentary booth for the 2 hours. It's a long race, no matter how you look at it. Will Devonish will start from pole. The Wedding Crashers Motorsport. He's been the second best driver all season. Bolger, alongside him here in second, is the champion-elect at the end of this race. He will be the GT3 champion. Third place, Brendan Ross, who has been there or thereabouts for most of this season and has done quite well in the Bentley. Oz Rob in 4th place, Bolger's teammate staying directly behind him, see if they can hook up and put some pressure on Wedding at the front. Lewis Wedding in 5th place for Team Antara by Loose Sim Sports. They're looking to take out the 3rd place in the championship from Brenton Foley here, who is starting in 6th place. Right behind him, it's only 1 point between these teams, so it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. Lime Mitch, who will be gunning for the Silver Cup honours here, starts from 7th place alongside Luke Joyner in 8th. Hans Brunswick, also Wedding Crashers Motorsport, 9th place. With Noah Tara, who was a late joiner but managed to get 10th with very little practice points. Also, that's a good at least they'll practice tonight, so it's a good result for him. Termo is in 11th alongside him. Steve Burko in the Car Guy Racing NSX, not ASX, that's the stock market, the NSX there. And it's a very nice looking livery, as our friend Michael mentioned to us before. Zach Ross, 13th. Matt Williams alongside him in 14th. Cracker in 15th, the other BC racing car, looking to get any points that can help in their championship battle. Brody starts from 16th place in his Aston Martin alongside John McDonald. We've got Brian Walsh as the last Wedding Crashers Motorsport car, and Greg Taro, who did not make it in time for qualifying, so he is starting from the back. Expect to see a charge through the field from him.
Michael, we're about to go green. What do you think's going to happen tonight? Who do you put your money on?
I've got to put my money on Will Devonish. I think through the practice during the week, he's the one that's had the most consistent lap times and the best lap times. And I think he's got a bit of hunger behind him. He hasn't really had its own way this season, and I think he wants to go out on a high. I
would tend to agree, Bagsy. I'm sure you'll make that 3.
I am actually putting my money on Bolger today. I think he's going to take it out.
All right. We'll find out in about 2 hours from now. The HSV Camaro safety car peels into the pit lane. Will Devonish has control of this 19-car field. 2 hours starts any minute now. The control line's coming up, and we are away. Pretty much on time this time, so no delay in terms of time bleeding away on the clock. Just getting down to business straight away. Devonish leads into turn 1 quite comfortably. Brendan Ross comes across for 3rd. Steve Bolger has moved up into 2nd place and slotted nicely in behind Devonish. All looks pretty straightforward. Most of the field pretty much starting or running where they started at the moment as they head up the huge amount of elevation change and on the way down to the bus stop chicane now. But Bolger's already threatening. He's not wasting any time.
Straight towards the inside into the bus stop chicane, but Will Devonish just chucks it in there. Cuts Bolger off and says, no, thank you, not taking that. It looks like Matt Williams there in the background missing the chicane, and Brian Walsh and Greg Turrer almost come together in the background too.
There was a few small challenges there as well. I think Brenton Foley nearly tried to send it up the inside of Lewis Wedding at the chicane, and then got his nose cut off as well. So early planning, early moves trying to be sized up, and did say this place is very hard to pass. You've got to be super committed to make it happen, and well, Lewis Wedding's going to try and make it happen down here at the toe of the boot, and he gets it done, and Foley's going to try and go with him. That's a very opportunistic move, and Ozrob's lost 2 spots in a single corner.
Yeah, Ozrob's super easy to do there. As soon as you're out of the groove, you're vulnerable to everyone. So Ozrob, he's just gotten pushed out wide there by Wedding, and Foley's been able to go through.
That's good news for Brendan Ross as well.
I was going to say, it was a very brave move from Devonish into the bus stop chicane there. He did not care that Bolger was there. He's like, I've got the line here, I'm going to fire it straight in there. And Bolger obliged and gave him the room. Good racing from the two at the front there.
Yeah, they're not clearing out of our straight of knots though at the moment. They've got about half a dozen car lengths to Brendan Ross, and then Foley's staying right with Lewis Wedding. So this will be an interesting battle to see how this sizes up, given that the two of them are only, or their teams rather, are only separated by a point in the standings, and there's now a change for position at the beginning of lap 2, Foley going through to 4th place.
Very nicely done there by Foley. He actually worked Wedding up high and wide on the exit of the final corner, and that gave him the run well enough to go down the inside at the first corner. Now he's just got to make sure that he's got enough space behind him heading into the bus stop, so that way Lewis Wedding can't drag up in that big AMG. There's still stuff kicking off behind. That's Lime Mitch now going through on Ozrob into the chicane and gets it done. So that's Silver Cup honours between the two of them is on the line, and Lime Mitch now into 6th place.
Yeah, Ozrob's had a horrific start. He's down 3 positions in 2 positions first lap, already 1 position this lap. I'm not sure what's happened to him at the start here, if he's just not quite getting into the groove straight away, but he seems a bit out of it at the moment. If he's not careful, lose 2 positions, Lime Mitch is going to get him for Silver Cup.
Yeah, he needs a good run though, Lime Mitch. He needs to be a number of more positions ahead of Ozrob. Remember, we said the difference between the two of them was 14 points coming into tonight, so there needs to be at least 3 or 4 spots, I think, at the bare minimum, if Lime Mitch was to win it as well. You potentially might be right there. I looked at it, thought it was 14, perhaps it might be 16.
Aaron Thomas was 14 points.
Sorry, you're right, yeah, 16 for Lime Mitch. Yeah, correct.
16 for Lime Mitch. So Lime Mitch needs, I believe, a podium and a DNF for Ozrob to claim Silver Cup.
Yeah, he needs a huge swing in his particular direction as well. We have seen Ozrob have a few of those weird internet glitches as well. He's not been one that's been immune to some of the lag issues we've seen from a handful of competitors across all the series in recent times as well. See a few drivers. Oh, Luke Joyner gets the wall on the outside of the last corner as well.
He's lost a little bit of his aerodynamics there. That's not going to help him.
Yeah, and he's now vulnerable a little bit to Noah Tara, who's actually vulnerable to Steve Burko, who has a bit of a look at the inside of turn 1. And Zach Ross is going to try and go the long way around the outside of turn 1. Can he get the drive off? Can he challenge the Acura up the hill? They're going to run side by side through the first part of the corner, but no, Zach Ross thinks better of it, and that's probably the wise decision there. Oh, and he got hung up on the curb as well to boot.
Yeah, those curbs are not nice. They kind of suck you in there. So Zach Ross almost getting out of shape. You can run side by side, but you need willing participants on both ends there. And it didn't look like Burko was going to be a willing participant for Ross.
Hey, that's my line.
Sorry, I'm stealing everyone's commentary.
I've done it to Hans a few times. He gets annoyed with me sometimes when I do that. But speaking of Hans Brunswick, he's at the head of this little battle at the minute. He's up to 8th place, and there's a few people in the live chat that are rooting for Hans tonight, and a few people asking for the link to Only Hans. Now, I know what that's in reference to. I think there's a little sticker on the back of his ATCC Group A car. Correct me if I'm wrong, Michael.
Yeah, that does sound about right. ATC, that group was a bit of fun, and I think that's transpiring into the rest of the series that he's been running at the moment. Good fun, everyone in the live chat.
Yeah.
Just a bit of update on the front. Remember how we were talking about Brenton Foley and Lewis Wedding being connected at the hip? Well, that gap's actually grown to about a second. Foley's been able to drive away from Lewis,
and
then just a bit further back, Lime Mitch and Ozrob are going to go side by side to the final corner. Or no, Ozrob showed the nose, but had to duck out of it. So again, remember that's the Silver Cup honours for the race as well, not just for the championship. A bit more of a gap in the championship, but yeah, that's definitely something to keep an eye on.
There's a piece of debris rolling down the front straight at the moment. I'm not sure if that just came off Lewis's Wedding's car or if he was the one.
I think he ran over it.
And just happened to, so I think he's just run over it. But yeah, there's still that little piece of debris. It's not going to cut a tyre or anything, but it's definitely going to make people think about that final corner.
I think that's the bit of debris that Luke Joyner flung off his car when he hit the wall on the previous lap, and then it was just sitting there, and Wedding's come along and collected it.
If we can go back, Zach Ross has actually got past Steve Burko, but they are still battling fiercely as they come up to the bus stop.
Yeah, here they are. He's managed to get that done in behind Noah Tara now. Was that done recently? Yes, it was. It was done prior to turn 1. Looks like it might have been done on the run to the final corner, actually. Our replay doesn't go back far enough to pick that up. But this is a really close fight. Noah Tara's got that Nissan and he's hanging on for dear life, basically. And he's a little bit wide of the track as we cut back to live pictures. Tara very wide of the track at the infield part of the boot as they run down toward the toe.
They are still, I was about to say joined up behind Luke Joyner, so I might as well continue with it. They've all joined up behind Luke Joyner. He's a little bit of a cork in the bottle at the moment. Hans will be thanking Luke Joyner for being a Lamborghini bro and holding up all the people who are baying for his 8th position at the moment. Yeah, this could end quite terribly if they keep being corked up with this. Because look how much Noah Tara mid-corner, they all Constantine are up. Luke Joyner's not. Big slide there from I believe it was Zach Ross.
Yeah, got caught out by the bump.
He's did that very infamous bump, but it's just, look how close they all are. Noah Tara's going to need to make a move here, or else he's going to lose positions to both these guys behind him, especially if he gets hung up dry. And he's got right in that slipstream. Who's going to be brave and pull out first? Noah Tara does. Can he make the move down the inside? Because he can't get back in because Zach Ross has filled that spot. So he's going to affect his line into this corner, and Zach Ross should get a better drive out. Not quite. He's so close. He's tapping "Let me pass" and Morse code on the bumper there.
The smart man here, I think, is Steve Burko. He's just trying to sit back and just wait for something to unfold at the moment. And that's probably not a bad strategy, given there's talk of some fuel saving having to be done as well. Meanwhile, this position up here, 6th place, has changed hands twice in the last minute. So Ozrob
Tara and Joyner side by side to the bus stop. Sorry.
There's green light now on the bus stop. Zach Ross around the outside, and they're going through the inner loop. Zach Ross wrapped around both Noah Tara and Luke Joyner to take 9th there.
Wow. Just as we were cutting up.
Steve Burko's got to the quarter panel of Noah Tara as well, so he's going to take that position potentially through this corner. He's got the racing line.
We're just going to go back and have a look at that move that happened up at the bus stop chicane. I was just about to say that Ozrob and Lime Mitch had traded places twice. See, this is what happened. Noah Tara had a look down the inside of Luke Joyner. they made a little bit of contact. They went a bit wide, and Zach Ross just said, "Thank you very much." And have a look at that. Just smart situational awareness driving, and right around the outside he went, and just picked those gaps absolutely beautifully.
Zach Ross is under attack from Luke Joyner now as they head back out from the boot, and Luke Joyner's then compromised himself and has got Noah Tara back on him.
Tara
Noah
tried the
takes
over.
inside. He gets hit by Burko. Some angry flashing there. But Noah Tara's got the inside on Joyner here, but he gives it up a little bit there. He doesn't really try and drive that in. So he's still trying to get past. Noah Tara is dancing around the back of Luke Joyner there.
And that's vulnerable.
Burko's taking advantage.
Yep.
So Noah Tara, Burko with what a run from Burko. Noah Tara just is like, I want to follow and try and get by Luke Joyner. He's been passed by 2 people while trying to get by Luke Joyner. It's got to be so frustrating for Noah Tara.
That's very smart from Steve Burko. That's perfectly smart driving. Capitalised on a situation that just unfolded ahead of him. Same way that Zach Ross did at the bus stop a lap ago.
Now he's vulnerable to Joyner. Joyner's got a great head of steam coming over the bridge there onto the back straight. Now they're basically nose to tail yet again, turning defense into attack immediately. Joyner diving down the inside into the bus stop. Oh, they almost make contact. They make a little bit of contact. Joyner can't get through. They just hold each other up, and that's let Zach Ross gain already 2 or 3 seconds on this group while they're all been fighting themselves. Lucky that didn't turn into an airplane crash there with the 3 of them making contact middle of the bus stop.
If I can direct our attention to 5th place, I think Lewis Wedding may be participating in some fuel saving because Lime Mitch and Ozrob, despite battling, have flown up to the back of Lewis Wedding.
Well, there's an easy way to determine this, Bagsy, and that's called going to the onboard camera. So let's have a listen. And I think the answer to your question is yes. Here we go, up through the chute, up to the turn 13. Plenty of lift and coast going on here. Oh, not there though, there isn't, as he gets caught out by that bump. And down to 14. Driving it a little bit harder through turn 14 this time. But
yeah, Lime Mitch and Ozrob right behind them, and they're looking at making moves on each other as they come down the back straight. Let's have a look at the lap time for Lewis Wedding last lap around. He got a track cut, it looks like.
46.5 actually he's been given, so it was a 46.5 that time, ran to a 46.0 is his best, so I think there might be a bit of fuel saving going on there, but out in
46.1s for Lime Mitch and 46.0 for Ozrob behind him.
Yeah, so they're catching him, and on top of that there's been some fast lap exchanges going on out the front too, so Wedding and Bolger, sorry, not Wedding, Bolger, Devonish and Bolger traded fastest laps on the previous lap, and on the lap just gone, they did the same. So here goes Lime Mitch, through he goes to 5th place, and that was an easy pass in the end, and probably a lot of that attributed to the fact that Lewis would have lifted out and coasted into the bus stop, just tried to carry that, let the momentum carry the car through, playing this long game like we've seen him play so many times before.
Oh, Matt Williams had a very big moment through the bus stop chicane there, managed to round it back up. That was almost disastrous for him.
Looking down the order too to see Greg Tara, who started rear of field up to 15th place, tucked in there behind Termo at the moment. So we'll go and pick up 15th place man Tara and see. Oh, actually, as we're cutting through the field, Brian Walsh has had a bit of an incident and is he facing the wrong direction? The answer to that question is yes. So where did that happen? Up the hill.
This is the bus stop.
Yeah, so he's coming up to the bus stop now. He was down in 16th place, so what happened to Brian Walsh? Did he just get his braking all wrong? And yes, he did. And went straight across the grass and couldn't control it and collects the wall. That's not too badly damaged, but the important thing, he was in an area off the racing part of the circuit.
Back up to 6th and 7th. Lewis Wedding.
Now Tara's gotten through on Termo. Sorry, that was where I was heading with that one.
Lewis Wedding is looking vulnerable to Ozrob now at the moment, as we see Lime Mitch use the full liberties of the track surface at turn 1. That BMW seems to have a lot of speed in the first section of the track through these sweeping corners over the bridge, but then loses out through the boot. So you can see Lime Mitch taking quite a bit of time out of Lewis Wedding through that section, and actually leaving Wedding a little vulnerable to Ozrob as they come into the bus stop. Is Ozrob going to have a look? Not quite this time around. And then you'll see Wedding through the longer, more grip limited corners, maybe rage onto the back of that BMW. But Osrob's looking racing here. He goes around the outside, tries to get the better run into the boot, going through the chute at the moment. Can't quite get it done there. Interesting line everyone's taking through this corner.
Look who's caught up. Look who's caught up. Hans Brunswick has caught up massively with all the fighting going on here. His last lap time was a 46.3 compared to the guys ahead. Sorry, 46.2 compared to the guys ahead, doing 46.9 for Lewis Wedding the last time around.
Sorry, we missed it on the broadcast, but Noah Tara has got past Luke Jones at some point. He's side to side with Steve Burko at the moment. They have been for the last 2 corners.
Yeah, they are. They're batting away here again. They were trying that down the main straight, and it's gone now back the other way. Burko the lock-up, though.
I'm going to say, though, for Zach Ross, who is now 2 seconds ahead of this angry little pack, as Noah Tara is now having to defend from Luke Joyner, he went from where, in 11th place where Noah Tara is, behind both Noah Tara and Luke Joyner, to ahead of them and getting away. Oh, Foley's had an issue.
Corner.
Yes, Foley had another. Now, I hope to God Foley hasn't had another one of these internet dramas, these game freeze dramas. What did it have? So he was in behind Brendan Ross, and okay, here we go. Little slide through 13, and 14. Turn 14 looks okay. Oh, he went off the road. Oh, he's had a big wallop of the wall. Huge wallop of the wall. Lime Mitch goes through, Wedding goes through, Osrob went through, Brunswick went through as well. So, wow, I'm not sure if we can put that down to a game freeze or not. Maybe it may very well have been.
I'm not sure. I think that...
Unfortunate spot to have one because it's super easy to get over that curve there, and then if you're on any of the curves on this track, like, it can spear you around. So maybe just a mistake there from Foley, and it's cost him quite a bit. He was on the tail of Ross, and that's 8 seconds up the road now.
That's a big free kick to Brendan Ross too. He's got a nice bunch of clear gap, and he's not got any. He's not close to the race leaders, but he's got a nice 5-second gap to Lime Mitch right now. That'll be something we're going to keep an eye on to see what times those guys are doing. Lime Mitch with a track cut last time around as well.
Oh, there's an accident, 14th and 13th. Matt Williams and Greg Tara, they've just come together heading into the chute. I think it was Matt Williams.
Yeah, Williams is around, and he's seated position to Cracker as well. Okay, Matt Williams coming through the inner loop, now down toward the boot. And what happened here? So got out of the groove, it was a little bit wide. Caught some curb, round he went, and plastered in the middle of the track, and yeah, nothing Greg Tara could do about it. Straight into him, bang. And Termar arrives on the scene and gets through unscathed, and yeah, a couple of cars going to look a bit second rate there.
It's really unfortunate for Greg Tara that he jinked left, jinked right, and then ended up just running straight into him. He didn't commit to either one.
Here's this battle still going on behind Zach Ross as well. The Burko-Noah Tara battle is far from over. The one I was really interested in was this one. Lime Mitch, Lewis Wedding, Osrob, and Hans Brunswick.
Hans is looking very racy here against Osrob, but Osrob wants to go around Lewis Wedding as well.
There's some covering going on here now. You can only make one move, so this is the thing that all of these drivers have got to be aware. You can only make one defensive move, and that might have upset Hans's rhythm just a little bit because he's lost touch to tune of a couple of car lengths to these guys now.
He just got a little bit too much curb. It's pitched the Lamborghini sideways to gather it up in the middle of the bus stop. Now, those three ahead of him just separated a little bit, but as they keep battling, Hans will be able to jump onto the back. In fact, Lewis Wedding's got, he seems to have found some pace that he was missing earlier because he's terrorizing the rear of that BMW as they come out of the tow. Great drive from the Mercedes, but can't do anything with it at the moment. They're getting very, very close, heading into the hill, having a look. Can't quite commit. Again, this doesn't...
So that's a lag issue. I was worried for a minute there.
Lag there.
I should learn to... Yeah, we should all learn to take a deep breath before we see any of those little lag issues going on, just to make sure it's nothing sinister.
Look how close Wedding is to the rear of that BMW, though, as they go through the penultimate corner.
Did I just catch Zach Ross having a bit of a moment through the... Yes, I did. There's kicked up a bit of smoke there. I was a bit worried. I saw him sideways for a few minutes. Very, very wide at the final corner was Lime Mitch, and then that gives Lewis Wedding the opportunity to pounce. It'll give Osrob the opportunity to go with Wedding if he can as well, and looks like he's going to get that move done. That's going to hold Lime Mitch high and wide. He'll have to leave a bit of room here. Now the side-by-side run.
Line Mitch wants to hold this outside line because it becomes the inside later, but it's out of the groove and it's not your optimum line, so he's going to have to give up that one. And if he's not careful, he's going to lose out to Brunswick behind him as well.
That BMW quick in a straight line. He's on the tail of the Lamborghini already. Hans has gone inside as well. He can't get it done. Line Mitch to the inside. Rob to the inside. They're all going to go to the inside, but in the end, they all remain line astern through the bus stop. In fact, Line Mitch just a little wide there, but managed to hold that position. Oh, terribly exciting stuff from these guys.
I would say also something we missed last lap. Noah Taro got past Steve Burko at the bus stop and then immediately spun up the tyres, leaving the bus stop, clipped the wall. Burko got back in.
So plenty of action up and down the field in the opening 20 minutes of this race, and we're going to start thinking about pit strategy in the not too distant future as well. When Line Mitch was leading this little battle group and he was really charging hard, I was about to remark the BMWs have come on really strong since Valencia. So Valencia, Istanbul, Monza, and they were looking pretty handy. And I'm surprised to see only the one of them turn up tonight. Aaron Thomas had actually been doing a pretty nice job in the other sister car as well.
And it just kind of goes to show the sort of different strengths and weaknesses each of these cars can have over a season. The first half, a lot of very, changeable tracks with, the likes of Silverstone and Donington Park, those corners, and Bathurst, where it's a lot more slow speed or medium speed sort of stuff. Whereas here, and Istanbul and Monza, very fast, very open, very flowing sort of tracks. And the BMWs just sort of come to life. So it's the sort of the changes in character of the circuits can really bring out the change in pace of each of these different cars. And that's one of the beauties of GT3 racing, as again, we're watching Lewis Wedding and Ozrob over the bridge with that BMW stalking behind.
This battle and the Tara and Burko battle are really the only couple of ones on track at the moment that have any significance. We've just seen Matt Williams retire from this race in the last 30 seconds or so as Ozrob's made the move. And a little bit of Morse code going on here as well. Lewis Wedding monstering the back of that Lamborghini all the way through the inner loop and now down to the chute. Now, Osrob's going to have to be careful to pick his line here, and that's a smart move because he has been penalised before down at the Austrian round for moving under brakes, and you do not want to do that. Once you commit to your line, you have to stay there. You're only allowed that one defensive move, and so far he's doing a pretty good job leaving a car's width, saying to Lewis, well, if you want to go past me again, you're going to do it the long way, son.
That's the thing, everyone has a replay file, so most people have the replay file running, so they'll be able to go back and say, look, we saw what you did here, and it'll be punished because it's not something we want, because it's very dangerous in terms of there's nothing you can do. As Will Devenish, that's a fast slap out the front. His gap is almost 5 seconds now from Steve Bolger. In fact, I think it has just hit 5 seconds. So Bolger is going to have to do a fair bit to get Lewis Wedding, getting Will Devenish.
Have a look at the lap times, though. There's huge disparity in the lap time. Like, it's over a second. So Devenish is a 44.440 that time around to Bolger's 45.691. And that is a trend, I believe, that is continuing over the course of the last couple of laps. So Devenish has been consistently in the 44s, just the last 5 laps going backwards each time. 44.4, 44.7, 44.6, 44.6, 44.8. And then you go to Steve Bolger and have a look at his times. 45.6, 45.2, 45.6, 45.4, 45.1. So I get the impression there's a little bit of fuel saving probably going on there from the Bolger at the moment.
Yeah, well, Devenish was one of the drivers who were concerned about the fuel measures earlier on the night, so it might be a bit of the rabbit in the hare, the tortoise in the hare situation going on. Maybe Devenish is trying to stretch his gap and his lead to try and buy a pit stop later on in the race that he might have to do a splash and dash, as we've got another retirement, Noah Tara.
And Burko. So something's gone on here. I reckon there's probably been an incident between these guys.
Oh, yes,
I'm going to go back and have a look at this. There's something has gone on. Okay, so Noah Tara's had an incident. Oh, big accident. That is massive. I think that's probably some sort of a failure for Noah Tara of some sort of nature, and that's wiped both of them out in the space of a matter of seconds.
It might be an internet drama as well, because Tara faded to the inside wall as they were approaching the bus stop. So, yeah, really unfortunate for the pair of them that they've come together like that, because they were having such a willing battle, and for it to end like that is just, it just sucks. It really sucks.
Oh yeah, you're not wrong. That's probably the one word you can use, and I think I'm just waiting to see a little thing pop up in the chat from Noah Turry, just typing in the Discord at the minute. So we'll get a lowdown on what that is in just a few minutes. I was also going to make a remark about Brendan Ross's lap times as well. He's been consistently in the 45s as well, save for a 46.2 thrown in there as well. So I think he's probably gone into a fuel-saving strategy too, just given he's in third place. He's all on his own and pretty much got nothing else to do right now. He's not really gaining any time to Bolger, and he's not losing any time to Ozrob behind. In fact, I think all that fighting with Ozrob, Wedding and co has worked in Brendan Ross's favour. And yeah, getting confirmation here, Noah Turra's wheel has failed. His wheel cut out and he had no control over the car at all. So as I said, something, it's probably not an internet failure. There's some sort of terminal computer hardware failure that's gone on there with the sim rig.
Such a shame for Burko as well. And he would not have seen it coming. I went to his onboard just to see what it was like. He's just going along through the bus stop, and suddenly he's flying backwards through the air, bouncing across the track and ripping the rear wheel off the car. So it's very unfortunate for him. And yeah, it's a shame for Noah Turra as well, because that was a very good battle, and it was shaping up to be a potentially race-long battle.
And it was very fair too.
It was. They were doing quite well, and there was a lot of back and forth. Luckily, we still have this 4-car train between Ozrob, Lewis Wedding, Hans Brunswick, and Lime Mitch that is treating us quite well.
Lime Mitch has gone to the tail end of this group as well now. So in the time we were looking at the replay and just cycling back through the field, he's gone to the rear of this group, and the group itself has settled down a bit. Now, Brenton Foley hasn't caught up to them after his little spin, half a dozen laps ago as well. So is he carrying a little bit of damage? Bags, you want to go and have a bit of a look and see if he's right hand down or what's going on there?
I'm not seeing from on the onboard any right hand down anything, but surely he is carrying some damage, because there's no way you could have that sort of wallop with the wall and not be carrying at least a little bit of damage.
Here goes Brunswick.
It's probably one of those things is he's gone for the inside of Lewis Wedding, and he's done quite well there. It's a very brave spot to make a move going, because you have to have that willing partner, otherwise you're just going to have a terrible time of it. And really, most of the time, this early in the race, you should have a willing partner, because there's no use standing your ground and crashing out the race when you've still got 90 minutes of racing to go. Speaking of which, we will be expecting pit stops very soon.
We sure will. And I have also noticed on the previous lap, not the last one completed, but the one before that, there was another track strike for Lime Mitch as well. So that's at least 2 for the BMW driver. And already with 2 on the board inside of the first 30 minutes, that is not a good sign. You need some of them up your sleeve a bit later on for if you make some mistakes as the race wears on. Getting confirmation from Steve Burko that he knows that it's not Noah's fault, but he said that he felt that impact. I think he might have to go and get an ice pack from the freezer then, or a coldie, and sit down and watch the rest of this race if that's the case.
Yeah, that would be a pretty big rattle through if you got a force feedback active wheel. That would hurt.
Oh, yeah.
If that snapped hard on you. Bit reminiscent of James Courtney and Alex Premer a few years ago at Phillip Island, just completely out of the blue. Not really much anything Burko could have done about that. Just kind of hits you in your blind spot. Hopefully Burko's all right. Hopefully it's not a proper injury, nothing like a sprained wrist or something, and we'll see him hopefully back racing again very shortly. But yeah, pretty sad way for them to end their GT3 World Challenge.
Burko's got to get
Hans Brunswick
Here
up
he goes
inside
again.
of Ozrob at the moment. He is the driver of. He rattled those curbs.
Yeah,
Damn, I wonder if that's going to give him a curb strike or not.
He'll feel that. Let's see what comes up.
He's made the pass though, and he'll be coming. How far are we away from the next? Oh yeah, the next sector is until after the boot, so we won't find out for a little bit.
He was given he wasn't given a track violation for that one, judging by what I'm seeing. He's actually.
I think the third sector markers
braking zone of the bus stop, so you won't see it until we come through the sole of the boot, I guess you're calling it, if we're going to go with the heel and the toe. So we'll just see it as it comes up here, whether or not it got a track cut.
I reckon we've got
And-
some stops going on here, guys. Welsh, Brody and McDonald have all just gone a lap down in the space of a couple of seconds. I think that they're probably in the pits, and let's have a look. And the answer to that is, oh no, they're not.
No.
I thought
Nah,
they all went a lap down in very quick succession, and that's just
They're all actually pretty
gone
good.
through.
Brody
Yeah.
and Walsh have been having a battle for the last 3 or 4 laps that has been quite active, and yeah, Brian Walsh.
We do have Rossi in the pits as
All right.
this
There we
group
go.
of 4 drivers come onto the the main straight. Very close, very well run battle between these 4 still. And I've got to say, Hans has done a very good job to find himself at the top of this group. And if we just look in the background from that camera shot, you can see that Zach Ross is actually on the tail of Brenton Foley in the Viper just coming onto the main straight. So we've got a battle pack here of 4, and then a little further back, a pair of cars coming very close together.
And the reason for that is Foley had a really poor lap the last time around as well. He'd been doing 47s and actually 46, and then he's had a pair of 48s. Whereas Zach Ross on his lap counter had been doing comfortably 46s. So Foley definitely nursing some sort of damage here. And he's going to, I would dare say, he's going to have to get that repaired. Just doesn't feel like himself, but I get the impression a pass is probably coming here, and that we probably will see Brenton Foley in the pits for a lot longer than a lot of these other drivers on the first round of stops.
I wonder if the hit, so at the front of the car, I wonder if it's actually taken off some of that front downforce. And if you lose some downforce around a circuit like this, it's going to be an absolute pain for the remainder of the stint, because you're going to be using more of the tire.
Race leader's in the pits.
All right, Will Devonish is in. There he is, and Rhodey comes in too behind them. Steve Bolger goes through, and Bolger's at the very end of the lane, so there we go. And
I think had to come in here because Brendan Ross got out into some fresh air, and he had a lot of fresh air. So if he'd gone even an extra lap, that probably would have hurt him.
well, this will
in
be
terms of
interesting
time lost.
because Lime Mitch is coming in now from the back of this battle group. So Brunswick, Osrob, and Wedding all go through now. Who's that trundling down the lane at the minute? Is that? That's
That was
Cracker. So he's
hit
gone
on
in. So
lap 16.
he's gone a lap down.
Ooh, but he's going to come out just ahead of this battle pack, so these guys could be on the tail of him very, very shortly. Luckily, there's a little bit of room, and he might be able to jump out of the way heading into the chicane. But the last thing you want is someone dropping out of the pits right in front of you as you're going through that fast section over the bridge, and he's not quite in the way or getting out of the way yet. He could, in fact, hold up the 2 Lamborghinis. They come through the bus stop. This could be spell trouble for one of them, but they both managed to sneak through. Yeah, well done from the trio there. In fact, all 4 of them, with Lewis Wedding sneaking through the inside as well.
Yeah,
That
Osrob tried to look around the outside there, and he realised that Cracker was in the way, so he had to duck back in behind Brunswick's Lamborghini and then just wait until they were through the corner before he tried to size up another move. But no, all 4 of them did very, very well there. The guys on the inside getting through. Cracker taking the right option, the wide line through the inner loop, and letting the 3 of them go past.
So
Now,
Brendan Ross is already back on circuit, heading towards the back straight right now. Lime Mitch has just exited the pit, so that gives you a bit of an idea of whereabouts they are. So with Bolger coming in now, whereabouts?
Devonish has come out into some clear air, so he's actually come out behind Greg Turrow, who's yet to stop. Greg recovering after that accident with Matt Williams earlier in the race. Now, does anybody pit from this little battle group in the next few minutes? And the answer to that is, oh, yes! Very late. Osrob was committed, and then Brunswick's come in with a very late move. Now, Wedding goes through and takes the race lead for a little bit. And Brenton Foley's come in as well. So gravel shed cars in the lane, or both of them in the lane. There's Brenton Foley's Viper.
And Devonish is just coming through the penultimate corner right now.
Yeah, and I expect Greg Turra to be in, and he's slowing down and sticking to the line, and he is, and that will give second place back to Will Devonish.
I'm wondering if something's going to be said to Hans Brunswick about his entry to pit lane there, because I'm not sure if there was said in the driver's briefing with the yellow line they have for the pit entry, if that's something they have to abide to or not.
Yeah, I second that, Bagsy. I think maybe there might be a little bit of a word exchanged post-race about what happened there. The downside is that a lot of these drivers are off in their own discords as well.
I'm just
in
going
their
to
groups.
Heather. We've just got Line Mitch coming down the main straight now, and Ozrob is just rejoining the circuit as we speak. So he's going to come out just ahead of the BMW. And that BMW, we've said, is very pacey through Sector 1. So he's going to be absolutely on the tail of the Lamborghini coming into the chicane. We've got Hans that's exited the pits as well. That's that multicolored mass in the background. But it looks like Ozrob's actually gained a little bit in that sequence as well.
And Hans is the big loser from that sequence.
Yeah, he's how far back is he? Let's do the math. When Ozrob goes through the sector split here, and he is approximately 4 seconds ahead of Hans Brunswick here. So what's that going to be attributed to? Is there maybe a little bit of less fuel taken on board? Maybe to just try and get some track position here, because they virtually came in together. Or maybe there's a little bit of accident damage that got repaired on one car and not the other.
Will Definition is finally, correction, Lewis Wedding is finally here.
All right, so he's gone 19 laps on this fuel stint, and that's a good number because we were doing the math before. If we get about 70 or so laps, mind you, we had the formation lap to consider. Our race estimate was 66 to 71 laps, and 71 being on the high side. Even if we got 70 laps plus the formation, you were still going to have to stop 3 times at an average of about 18 laps a stint. So Wedding's been able to go 19 laps, whereas people like Devonish have only been able to make it to 17 on top of the formation lap for this first stint. So the next stint will be pretty critical for people like Will Devonish and Steve Bolger that came in around the same time to see if they can get to, I guess, the critical lap number, as Mark Larkham in Supercars likes to call it, and see if they can get home.
Well, Wedding out of the pits now. He's going to be ahead of Hans. He's come out right behind Line Mitch and Ozrob.
There he is.
So battle will resume amongst these three, and Hans has to work his way back through them all over again.
Yeah, and that battle group has also become quite widespread as well. So whereas Line Mitch has started to make some gains on the Lamborghini in the last lap, Wedding will probably do the same, but Brunswick's really dropped off the tail of this group. He just hasn't had the car get right
Luke
to
Joyner's
speed.
just had out of the first corner while following Zach Ross. He's had a spin, and he's just nosed the inside wall slightly. So it's a loss of time there for Luke Joyner.
Yeah, down at the bottom of the main straight here. So, yeah, you're right. He was in behind Zach Ross. So these guys, I believe, have already stopped. And down to the first corner. Is it just a loss of braking? Turn 1 was all right, but he just ran off the exit curb and just gassed up a little bit too much. And a little similar sort of hit to what we've seen up at the bus stop chicane for another one of the drivers, I think for Brian Walsh as well. So 2 Lamborghinis from the from the Lewis Wedding Crashers Motorsport. I could say Lewis Wedding Crashers because that's what it's named after. Wedding Crashers Motorsport team in the wars. But no harm, no foul, but he's dropped an awful lot of time.
Just want to quickly return to the discussion we were having about how Hans might have lost that time and how, for example, Lewis Wedding has managed to go a lap longer. Firstly, I think the strategy is pretty simple here in terms of tyres. You just take tyres at every stop. It's not like Monza where you could maybe think about not taking tyres if you wanted some track position. There's just way too much load on the tyres here, way too much turning, way too much force through the tyres to get away with doing 2 stints consecutively. So it can't be tyres. It might just be that the Lamborghini under Hans's right foot is using just a little bit more fuel compared to Ozrob. We did see the battle in that group back off just a little bit at the tail end of that stint, which allowed Hans to come through. Maybe he used a bit more fuel to do that, and so it's resulted in longer fuel fill time. On the other hand, for Lewis Wedding, getting that extra lap in over everyone else builds a lot of flexibility in his race plan going forward. So he might even be able to stretch that even further come the tail end of the race and have a shorter stint at the end, which means he'll have maybe fresher tyres, maybe shorter fuel, maybe a lighter car. So and even if a safety car comes out maybe 34, 35 minutes from home, he might be able to take that as well because he knows he's got that extra lap in his back pocket. So building the flexibility into the strategy now is a great plan for Lewis, and it's something that we've seen him do time and time again in various guises throughout AMSL's history.
What it's going to do is potentially put him in contention for a podium, because he was able to do that fuel saving and save those extra lap or two compared to the two in front of him, and maintain relatively close contact with them through the pit stops. So despite them coming out with fresh tyres and being able to potentially undercut, he stayed with them. And that'll add up to, if he does 25-minute stints, then he's going to be 75 minutes into the race. And,
35 minutes.
35 minutes since, apologies. He'll be 105 minutes into the race at his last pit stop. Only 15 minutes left. So he's really only going to need half a tank of fuel, if that. So that's the amount of stationary time there would easily catch him up to Brendan Ross.
And on top of that,
Maybe
the flexibility that's built into that strategy as well. Sorry to cut you off there, Michael. The flexibility that's built into that strategy as well means he can actually run the tank all the way down to empty on the third stint, take the shorter fill, or if he wants to play a different positional game, he can actually come in a little bit earlier than he would be planned to, around the same time that all the other drivers are taking their third stop, have that shorter fill, and then take the jump at that point rather than run it all the way out to empty.
Yeah, so flexibility is the name of the game for Lewis Wedding, and it allows him to maybe take a safety car that other people might not, or do something crazy. If he sees a gap on track that he can slot into, you might be able to drop into it while everyone else scrambles to figure out what's happening. Just quickly as well, he's gotten past Lime Mitch. Lime Mitch innocuously just let Wedding through coming out across the bridge onto the back straight, and he doesn't seem to have the same vigor in his driving as he did in the first stint. Maybe he is looking to try and save a bit more fuel this time around, but that BMW almost looks lethargic coming out of corners at the moment. I wonder if something's gone wrong, or there's a problem, a hardware problem or something. But he just doesn't seem to have the same sprightliness that we saw from Lime Mitch in the first stint.
I'm wondering if after the first stint he's realised that he might be running this a bit close on fuel and has decided to dial it back just that little bit. Just keep in contact with these guys in front of him and try and get that extra lap or so, because it's definitely going to be a bit touch and go if he's not careful. Someone who is struggling a little bit, Hans Brunswick, his last lap was not very good at all. He had a terrible middle sector, 147.9, so better part of 148 there. And he's dropping back from these three who he was battling with in the first stint.
Yeah, there he is in back of shot. Just coming back to the Lime Mitch argument, since the pit stop sequence, his lap times have all been 46s, 46.3, 46.2, 46.3 and a 46.9. So maybe you're right, Michael. Maybe he's going into a different strategy.
Oh, sorry, Lewis Wedding
just had a massive
run on Osrob.
Yeah, he's just gone through as well.
If we get a replay of that, that was the slingshot he got off the corner was insane.
Yeah, I did see that happening just in the front of shot as we were talking about Lime Mitch. So here it is. Now, whilst he did the right thing, got out of the way. Oh, and Lewis had a bit of a slide job on coming out of the bus stop chicane as well, but held the line a bit better. Osrob just went wide, had a really poor run off at the top of that thing, and Wedding just committed super, super hard to the next corner, the left-hander, and the door was wide open. Just sailed straight through it.
Well done, Lewis Wedding.
That's
so
a
he
very,
now
very nice
heads
pass
to fourth position. What we've been talking about Lewis Wedding building flexibility into his strategy, the problem is he's 12.5 seconds behind Brendan Ross. Now, a full tank...
It is coming down, though.
Yeah, it is coming down, but a full tank of fuel is, what, 25 seconds? So it'll be mighty close if he tries to take a half tank later on in the race. That gap could be almost on top of each other, but he does have to put in a fair bit of work to bring that gap down. Rossi's been setting some pretty consistent laps.
That being said, though, you look at the times that Wedding's been doing, he's just started to ratchet the pace up a little bit. Since the pit stops, he's done 45 or mid-45s. Before the pit stops, he was doing mostly in the 46s. So I think he's realised the benefits of that little bit of strategy, that he's now sort of put himself maybe a lap difference with the drivers ahead and he's just started to pick the pace up just a little bit. Rossi, on the other hand, last lap 46.0, and since the pit stop sequence, he's been a bit all over the shop. His best was a 45.5 since the pit stops. He's had a 47.1, a 45.9, a 47.0, a 46.3, and now a 46.0. So he's only just started to respond a little bit to what Wedding is doing in the last lap or two. But his lap times haven't been that consistent. But maybe they're just starting to get into a zone where he realises, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to be in some trouble here if I can't hold on, if I can't maintain this sort of gap.
And
Rossi might be struggling. Rossi might be struggling just with the fact that he's been by himself for almost this whole race. He sort of lost once Foley spun behind him. He didn't have anyone in contact with. He's been running one of the loneliest races of anyone out there so far and hasn't really seen anything else.
Yeah, I was about to make exactly the same point. Sometimes when you're in that rhythm, it's fine, but as soon as you get a break in that rhythm, say like a pit stop or passing some traffic, which Rossi has had to do, he's had to make his way through Rhodey and he's coming onto the tail eventually of Turmo, as we watch Rhodey get well out of the way at turn 1. At least I was seeing that on my screen. Sometimes when that rhythm breaks, it's really hard to get back into that zone, and at a track like this where zone is everything, where flow is everything, it can become very, very difficult to attach yourself back into that consistent lap time. And again, the last lap around for Rossi of 46.6, so it's not coming back to him at the moment. He's dropping well away from the top two, and pretty quickly into the clutches of Lewis Wedding. It's we mentioned it was 12.5 seconds a lap ago. It's already down to 11 seconds 2 laps later.
Well, we're partway into this stint as well now. So when did Rossi stop? He stopped all the way back on
He was
lap
the first one.
Yeah, lap 17.
Lap 16.
Oh, end of lap 16 he came in. Yeah, correct. And actually that lap for him as well has got a big fat blank check drawn through it as well, which means he got a track cut on that lap as well. So he came in at the end of 16. His out lap was lap 17. Lewis Wedding, on the other hand, came in at the end of lap 19 and has been going pretty solidly ever since. If Rossi's dropping, say, 2-3 tenths of a second a lap, he will hang... Oh, no, he's not. He's going to drop a lot more than that now because he's had a huge accident off the penultimate corner. Got it all out of shape. He's going to have to light it up and turn that car around. I was just about to say that if he drops a 2 tenths or 3 tenths of a second a lap or so, he's still going to maintain an advantage over Lewis Wedding coming into the pit stop sequence, but it's not going to be that way now.
Wedding just had a massive slide in the final corner there and came so close to the wall, which is why Oz Roberts got right up behind him now.
Here's the replay from Rossi. We're going to go on board. Just have a listen to it. Yep, lit it up when it was on the curb. He lit it up when it was on the curb, and around it went. He grazed the wall and then managed to get it going again. And then Lewis Wedding would have thought his Christmas has all come at once. He's like, oh, geez, Brendan Ross is there? Yes, please. Let's get it on.
So basically exactly the same thing as Foley did earlier on in the race. But obviously he lost a lot less time compared to Foley because he's managed to hold out ahead of Lewis Wedding and Oz Rob. So, yeah, maybe a bit of a mental mistake there.
Yeah, that's a huge mental mistake, that one. I think you're absolutely right. You can't light the car up when you're sitting on a curb like that. And we did say that you did want to stay away from a lot of these curbs at this particular track as well. You don't want to touch them, or if you're going to need to touch them, you don't do it for too long, and you certainly don't do it when you need to apply the power either. Or as Lion Mitch threw the grass in the back of shot as well. That was very nearly another accident waiting to happen as well. But all this hard work that Lewis Wedding's been doing now, putting in these extra bit of lap times, Rossi's been looking at it going, okay, I need to respond, and then when he goes to respond on the third lap of that particular response, he made a mistake. That being said, though, Ozrob's staying right with Lewis Wedding here.
Great work from the Silver Cup leader at the moment. Just quickly, as we come up through this corner, you can see a licorice straps that lead to the inside wall. That was due to Luke Joyner a few laps ago, pitching his Lamborghini in over the bump that we've been talking about all night. Just made contact with the inside wall, and if we go find Luke Joyner, you see he's missing his bonnet because of that. So unfortunate for Luke, who's just sitting outside the top 10 at the moment. We're watching this battle still heading now into turn 1. We've got about 72 minutes remaining in this race. So still plenty of time for things to change around. But at the moment, of these 3 or 4 drivers, if we're looking at Liam Mitch as well, Lewis Wedding seems to be the one most consistent and the one most able to pick up the pace. But Ozrob's not too far behind him.
Bagsy, I'd like you to go and have a bit of a look at Hans Brunswick, if you can, for me, please. I just want to see if anything strange is going on with that car. Did he take tyres at the last stop?
Yeah, he did take tyres at last stop. No one opted against tyres.
And I think Rossi's just let these guys go. Sorry to cut you off there. I think Rossi just overcommitted a bit, but then just elected not to fight it and let these guys go. He knew the gig was up and he's just going to follow them around here. Yeah, so saying Hans Brunswick did take tyres at the last stop, but that still doesn't explain the huge pace differential we're seeing compared to what was going on in the opening stint.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's just the fact that he doesn't have people to that carrot to hang on to, but the thing was, he was a decent way back in that first stint, and he brought himself back up to the front. So I'm not sure if it's the fact that the people in front of him picked up the pace a bit better, or if he feels the need to go a bit easier to fuel save a bit more, if he was concerned, like some of the others may be, about people managing to get to the end on fuel. But if we compare, his lap times haven't been that good, but he's setting comparable sectors to Foley behind him. So maybe he took some damage somewhere that we didn't see, and that is slowing him down a little bit. But as I think Foley's just hit the wall as well. I was watching Brunswick, and Foley hit the wall in the background, I believe. So it's hard to tell what exactly is going on with him. Maybe he just pushed a bit too hard at some point and spooked himself a little bit. I'm not sure. It is still only 8 seconds, and we saw it was about 6 or 7 in that first stint that he did it pulling back to that group. But at the moment, that's the line Mitch leaves behind. So, yeah, it's an interesting. I'm not sure what's happened with him there.
Yeah, he just made a mistake there at turn 1 as well.
Yeah, sorry to jump over the top of you. Liam Mitch as well hasn't been the same in this stint compared to the first stint. He's lost 3 or 4 seconds compared to Lewis Wedding and Ozrob as Rossi just cuts the exit of the bus stop chicane again, so expect to see him get a track cut. It's almost as if some of the pace, maybe not just from Liam Mitch and Hans, but from the whole field, the pace has just kind of gone away from these guys. It seems that Lewis Wedding and Ozrob are the only ones really setting anything close to their personal bests at the moment. Even up the top of the field, Will Devonish and Steve Bolger are a full second away from where they would expect us. As I say, that Devonish puts in a 44.9 just to prove me wrong, as Ozrob takes a little bit of a look. But it doesn't seem that the pace is there nearly as much as it was in the first stint.
No. Devonish seems to be apart from a couple of missteps in the last probably 2 laps, he's been the one who's still mainly on the pace and really consistently setting his times. He's 18 seconds ahead of Steve Bolger now, and it's going to take a safety car or some very bad driving or planning from Will Devonish for Bolger to get anywhere near him, because he is just he's so far out and setting his lap time so consistently. And also Bolger had a track cut on his last lap as well, that he's really just going for it.
Yeah, there's a few track cuts that are starting to come in quite regularly at the moment. So Steve Bolger was one. Brendan Ross has had one as well, which I think Michael picked up just a few moments ago. Termo's had one as well, and before that, Will Devonish had one as well. So given that live races only gives us sort of the last 10 laps that drivers have been doing, we might have to get either Bagsy or Michael, one of you guys, to go off and do a little bit of a stock take through the results in the game, just offline, and just see who's actually got how many up their sleeve at the minute. Because I get as we've just lost Brian Walsh as well, I've just noticed. I just want to know... Go on.
Go ahead, sorry. I'll finish off afterwards.
I just want to get an idea of who's got how many track cuts left up their sleeve, because we're already getting it to the halfway point into this race, and I reckon a few guys don't have very many left.
How many do they get total for this race?
So because it's a 2-hour race, they get 5 up their sleeve, and then on the 6th one, they'll get penalised.
Yeah, I reckon there's a few guys that are already halfway to that mark, well and truly.
100%.
The top 3 have all taken 1 track cut so far. The top 4 have all taken 1 track cut so far. Brendan Ross has 2.
Fair. Just to round off what we were saying about Brian Walsh, he locked up a tyre heading in down the chute, and that sent him into the wall, pirouette along the wall, and decided to take himself out of the race. So unfortunate for Walshy. He's got a big week of racing ahead as well, though he was saying that he might not have even turned up tonight due to commitments with Super 2 later on in the week. So we wish him the best of luck with that one. And it's been good to have him through this GT3 season.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think it's also probably just put in a bit of practice tonight just to get warmed up for some of the racing he's got. I think he's got ATCC tomorrow night. I'm not sure if we'll see him for supercars. I don't think we'll see him for supercars at Townsville, but then we've got Phillip Island and he on Super 2 on Friday, and he was talking about what mid-pack lap times were for Phillip Island, so I dare say we will see him a bit later on in the week for Super 2 over on the Lewis Wedding channel.
Just taking a quick stock take of everyone. The current naughty boy is Brenton Foley with 3 track cuts so far. He is the most. Pretty much everyone else has 2 or 1, and Zach Ross is the only one with a clean sheet so far. No track cuts. Obeying those lines quite well.
Okay,
and we've got our first pit stopper of the second round of stops, Greg Turra in the pits. And partly because he did the Foley and the Ross, well, what we're going to call the Foley now, getting it spun up on the exit of the penultimate corner and hitting the wall. So he's come straight in after that.
Yeah.
So he's the first one of the second round of pit stoppers.
And that's after only 9 laps as well. So that's not what... correction. That is 11 laps, but still nowhere near a full stint. So he's going to have some issues towards the end of this race for fuel, potentially.
Yeah, expect
I'm guessing there was significant damage that he needed to fix.
Yeah, that spin is obviously reflected in his lap time and his in-lap as well. We've seen most in-laps around a minute 53. His was a minute 59, so there was a huge disparity in the in-lap time.
Lime Mitch has actually come alive a little bit and is catching up to Brendan Ross, Ozrob, and Will's Wedding.
Here we go, so let's pick this battle up. So Brendan Ross is sandwiched in the middle here. Lewis Wedding's cleared away a bit. Ozrob hasn't been able to go with him, but this will be the next one we're looking at here is Lime Mitch trying to get a move done on Brendan Ross. Now, that's Termo in the back of shot. Now, he's a lap down. Now, Hans Brunswick has really dropped out of contention here. Looking to see where he is in all of this. Has he come in for a stop? No.
He's just come through the turn 1 now. He's coming over the bridge currently. Something like 10 seconds behind Lime Mitch at the moment.
So he's not been having good laps as well as Hans Brunswick, so I'm not sure what happened. Maybe he was distracted by some food or something in his cockpit, or I'm not sure what's happened with him, but he's just absolutely gone cold. If there was a way to describe it, it would be Sub-Zero.
Getting a comment coming through in the live stream from the Midnight Owl, just looking at him saying everyone's settled in for the long haul and he wonders how the last 20 minutes will go. Well, I guess that's what everybody needs to think about now is how they will get to the back end of this race, and are strategies going to converge? Are people going to take a different route to get to that final pit stop, and then will it set it up for a nice run to the flag? I mean, if you're the race leader at the minute, you're on easy street. You're nearly 20 seconds, or you're now 20 seconds clear of your second place rival, and you're just pretty much just running around like a metronome at the moment. Same for Steve Bolger, albeit 20 seconds back and then 20 seconds in front of Lewis Wedding. So the top 2 pretty much almost settled now. They just need to just keep it on the black top. Everyone else behind, the strategy game is going to start to unfold.
Will Devonish is in a position now where it doesn't matter if he can't make fuel to the end. He could probably push as hard as he wants, and it's going to be a thing where he's got the time for a splash and dash if he needs to. 20 seconds, not changing tyres, you can probably get into the pits, splash of fuel and get out and still be ahead and make it to the end of the race regardless of what happens.
Well, the man he just put a lap down was his teammate in Luke Joyner, the third of the Wedding Crashers Lamborghinis that are still in this race.
I'm just going to interrupt you, Nether, because we've got BMW on Bentley action down the back straight heading into the bus stop. And Lime Mitch has got the move done. So Lime Mitch is back on the charge, getting that move up into 5th place. And he's on the tail of his Silver Cup competitor, Ozrob, for the next position on the road.
Championship implications here. Foley has just pulled into the pit lane to retire his car.
That will be to do with, I think he's probably had a recurrence of those wheel issues and the freezing issues. As we're just watching the replay here of that.
He's spun it in pit lane.
Yeah, I think he's having some more trouble than first met the eye. So I think that spin that we had a lot earlier in the race has gone to his detriment, and he's probably taken the smart call here. And I think looking forward to ARW tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Over on the Apex Rear Wing YouTube channel. It'll be the round 5 of the BTCC season, so season 9 for ARW, and then he'll probably look to supercars on Thursday and trying to find a way to get those gremlins sorted in the next 24 hours. So that is pretty much done and dusted for Teams Championship for the top 3. That means all Lewis Wedding has got to do is keep that Loose Simsport, the Team Antara by Loose Simsport Benz on the road, and the job is done.
Cracker is still in this race, so if Wedding has an issue and drops behind Cracker for whatever reason,
and hence why I said he's got to keep it on the blacktop. He's basically just got to bring it home and be home ahead of Cracker now to secure that 3rd place in the championship. Doesn't affect Foley's retirement, doesn't affect his standings in the top 3.
He goes by Mitch on Osrop into the bus stop, and he's made that quite easily. He's sliding around a little bit. Is Osrop going to be able to get back to him? Because that's gone.
Oh, got to go the long way though.
Not quite. He almost left the door open for Brendan Ross to sneak back in. But Lime Mitch has held the car together and has got past. Brendan Ross wants a little bit of this action as well, but he's not going to have it around the outside there.
It's almost like light fuel. It comes alive.
Yeah, well, quite possibly. It might not. It could be fuel as well, but it could be tires as well. It might be finding that the balance of the tires just finds its sweet spot about halfway or 3/4 the way into the stint as we come up on an hour remaining. So could be a number of factors here. But yeah, Lime Mitch all of a sudden's come alive. Maybe he's saved enough fuel in the first half of the stint to go off and have a run now at the second half of the stint. So we'd be expecting pit stops around the halfway point. We haven't really seen anyone in as of yet. So everyone's done a good job of conserving this stint, making it last long enough to get beyond the halfway point.
None of the major players have come in just yet.
I'd say Will Devonish will probably be at the end of this lap, unless he's managed to do a monumental saving run. Although we do have to, and Ross is in. So we do have to consider the fact that they did have the formation lap as well at the start of this race.
Yeah, correct. So now right on the half distance mark, Brendan Ross comes in. What we really need to start doing here is having a look at where our race leader is. So he's coming out of the toe and on the way up to the 3rd sector. We probably need to have a bit of a look at how much time is left on the clock and the lap times that are being done, just to get an idea of how far we're going to go into this race. So this is lap 34 for the race leader. So this will then get us to 68 laps by the time, or there or thereabouts, by the time we get to the end of this 2-hour race, or the 1 hour that's remaining, with another 2 stops to factor in. So I think 68 laps, just doing the rough math on the phone right now, is where we're going to be at, save for a potential safety car or something else going on. Safety car would spice it up though.
Devonish continues around and sets the fastest lap. Wow. So Devonish is definitely at the bottom of that fuel load. But
he knocked a full 100th of a second off his previous fastest lap. So
and a purple final sector.
Doing it in little bits.
All right.
So Bolger in, Cracker in this lap.
So Steve Bolger in from 2nd place. Cracker in from what was 10th on the road. Now, he was 10th because now Brendan Ross has actually gone through to reclaim 9th. He was actually running ahead of Brendan Ross for a little bit. Wedding goes through to
Lime Mitch is in.
There he is, and back a shot. In he comes. And, Greg Tara, a little slide through the final corner as well.
Watkins Glen Drifto.
Well, while the pit stop sequences are underway, I've just noticed that Brenton Foley has stuck his head into the box here, and I'm assuming, Brenton, that if you can hear us, that you've had a recurrence of those game freezing dramas again that have plagued you for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I had 4 or 5 during that race, and frustration set in, and I just decided to retire because the last one gave me a couple of track cuts, so I was towards the end of my limit, and with Xeris not racing tonight, I knew I'd finish 3rd either way, so just decided to call it because I was getting a bit frustrated and angry and didn't want it to happen in front of another car and take them out of the race.
And that's a fair call as well. And I'd imagine that one of those spins was the one between the final two corners where we saw you get out on the right-hand side, and as you picked the throttle up, the car jumped sideways and you nosed into the outside wall as well pretty early in the race.
Yeah, I had in the braking zone there, which spat me onto the curb. So the spin was kind of half my fault, but the freeze put me on the curb. My setup for the Viper for this round was very low, so I can't touch that curb at all. So the freeze put me on the curb, and then when I was kind of recovered, I just ended up spinning into the wall. So it was 50-50 my fault, the game's fault on that one, but yeah,
just
frustrating.
Just going to interrupt you, Foley. Lime Mitch is just taking his pit stop, is exited immediately out ahead of Brendan Ross. So they're going to resume their battle from just before the pit stop. So they head into the bus stop, pretty much nose to tail this lap around. Sorry to cut you off there, Foley. Yeah, sorry to hear that you're getting those game freezes. Are you able to? Do you think you have a handle on what it might be, and are you able to get it fixed for some running later on in the week?
I hope so, because I've got ARW and supercars coming up. I think I'm narrowed it down towards Windows, because it's definitely not hardware or graphics cards or anything like that, because I've tried multiple of them. But yeah, who knows? I'm going to try reinstall it again into a different location tomorrow for like the 4th time. So fingers crossed, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, fingers crossed from our point of view here as well. We certainly don't like to see anybody missing any action due to no fault of their own, but hopefully you can get on top of it, and look forward to seeing what you can do tomorrow night with the ARW boys and supercars from Townsville on Thursday.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'll just quickly say that Devonish and Bolger have been in an absolute league of their own in this World Series, so well done to them on driving so fantastically week in, week out.
Yeah, I second those comments, and I think the other two boys here will probably say the same thing as well. They've been head and shoulders above the rest, shared the majority of the race wins and the podiums throughout the season, and there's still sprint season to go as well coming up, as we said, starting in 2 weeks' time. Lime Mitch has managed to hold station for the moment after coming out of the stop. Will Devonish has also taken his service, come back out in 4th place. So Wedding, Ozrob and Hans Brunswick, the only men yet to come in and take service, although we suspect and we turn our heads to and agree, judging by the cog, that Lewis Wedding is in.
It's a much earlier stop than he had last time, and looks like Ozrob's going to come in as well.
Ozrob in as well, and we'll look to see if Hans Brunswick comes in as well, but he's a couple of turns from the pit lane. And the answer to that is yes. And he's done the same thing again, where he just sort of straddled that yellow line, just tried to milk that line for all that it was worth. But you're right, Bagsy.
Just quickly,
Lewis Wedding has come in, and he's also, it was about the same sort of length as everybody else, but he did have that flexibility up his sleeve where he did push the lap time envelope a little bit heavier in that second stint.
It was a 17-lap stint for Lewis Wedding that time around. I just wanted to quickly make a mention. The gap between Wedding and Ozrob at the end of that stint was over 8 seconds. Ozrob's tyres or his driving or something just went fully off a cliff at the end of that stint, and he lost a mountain of time. So it'll be interesting to see where he pops out relative to Ross and Lime Mitch, who are just coming through the penultimate corner now.
Where are they now? They're just coming through the final they're on through the final sequence of corners now. So Ozrob's on the move. Lewis Wedding's already gone, so Wedding's going to be in complete control here. Come into some clean air, not going to have any problems whatsoever. The real battle's going to be where Ozrob feeds into, because he's in the lane and he's just lost positions to the pair of them. They've gone through, and they're going to have some margin too. They're going to have about 3 seconds, and then where does Brunswick pop out? He's still trundling down the lane as well, and he's not going to really make a loss or a gain on this one.
He's going to come out pretty comfortably in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. Here's Hans.
He has actually gained a little bit of time on those in front of him, though. I believe it was about 14 seconds before pit stops. Now it's 12.
Yeah, I'm going to go and have a look at the lap times just to see what they were on their in-laps. So Brunswick's, they stopped up the top end of the circuit, so that's a bit of a drama for them. So Brunswick was slower by a full second and a half coming in on the in-lap. compared to Ozrob as they pit up that top end of the
Whoa.
circuit. So it'll all be down to how they get the outlap going. I don't think he's lost a lot of time. I don't think he's gained very much either. It'll probably settle down once they get through the next lap after the pit stop sequences have finished. Lime Mitch and Brendan Ross, here we go again on the run down to turn 11 and 12.
The heel.
The heel of the toe, as we like to call it.
The heel of the boot, yeah.
The heel of the boot,
Just
sorry,
quickly,
yes.
completely disregarding what's happening on here, Will Devonish, 7 thousandths outside of his fastest lap last time around. So he's still got the hammer down as Lime Mitch and Brendan Ross both run wide, coming back onto the main circuit, now through turns 13. Lime Mitch just takes a little bit of curb on the inside, and that unsettles the car. And Rossi follows him almost off the edge there. Very lucky not to do the incident into the wall there. Just does tap the wall at the final corner, and it's 0.3 of a second between the pair of them, with 52 minutes remaining.
I'm surprised that Lewis Wedding did not go further in that run. I'm not sure if he just wasn't fuel saving as much and was pushing more. But yeah, it was very interesting to see a 19-lap run followed by a 17-lap run.
Well, the question I'll pose to you, Hans, not Hans, Bagsy, is, sorry, look at the gap he's made to the people he was racing against. So it's not really a matter, I think, of whether or not he can go that far. He's made a decision here to try and get the leg up on the guys he's racing against, and it's worked out. He's 13 seconds ahead of Lime Mitch and Brendan Ross, who were immediately behind him heading into the pits.
It's like Will Devonish just set a fastest lap on a full tank of fuel, but putting those fresh tyres to use. So
With a purple
good
middle
job.
sector as well. So he had a purple middle sector the last lap, and then he had it again on this particular lap where he set the fastest lap. And you know what the strange part is? He was saying to me before the racing started tonight, when I remarked on his 1 minute 44.1, which at the time was the quickest lap across all the practice sessions that had been running throughout the week, he said, "Oh, the race pace won't be that good."
What a dirty, filthy liar.
But just quickly, like I was saying, is that if you include the formation lap, that's 19 and a half laps, so maybe 19 and a third laps on that tank. So it shows how good Lewis Wedding is at fuel saving. We did mention it could be difficult here, but Lewis Wedding is absolutely nailing the fuel saving at this point.
Think about it this way too, Bags. We did say the magical number for a pit stop, for a sequence on fuel was 18 laps. So to do 19 and 17, you add those two together, you get, and divide it by 2, you get 18. And he's obviously had the formation lap in that equation as well. So pretty much spot on the money for where you want to be. Just went about it a little bit differently, having slightly compromised lap times on the opening stint to make sure that he had that fuel up his sleeve, and then ratcheted it up a little bit to put himself into a very nice position, which is now third place and well clear of this pair of cars by the tune of over 12 seconds, or now nearly out to 14. So
the question is he going to be able to have a chance to take on Bolger? Can he just push through these next two stints, not going to be encumbered by fuel saving, and manage to catch up to him? The last 2 lap times were similar.
2 tenths difference, 2 tenths in favour of Lewis Wedding.
Brendan Ross got past.
I'm just going to jump in to say that Brendan Ross has actually made the move on Lime Mitch heading down the chute. Lime Mitch got a little wide through the outer loop, and it allowed Rossi up the inside as they head into the boot.
And there's chasing going on.
And in fact, Ozrob's come back into that mix as well.
Yeah, there's a little bit of battling that these two have had has allowed Ozrob to get himself back up to speed and latch onto the back of Lime Mitch. Now, he could comfortably get home from here and just stay behind Lime Mitch the whole entire way and still come home with Silver Cup honours. It's not going to be a huge problem for Ozrob. Although, Rossi, what are you doing? You're weaving all over the track. Lime Mitch decided not to go with him that particular occasion, but
maybe just got a little bit of wheel spin.
Just a little bit of wheel spin, possibly. Oh, and a little rub of the outside wall there as well. He didn't want to do that. He's doing this a lot, though. Look, he's going all the way left to right just to try and break that toe. But it's not really at full chat for long enough to be able to utilise the toe. He really got to get a good run off the final corner. Maybe it was to do with him rubbing the wall. Maybe he wanted to immediately go defensive.
That BMW does have some very good straight line pace, though.
Oh, mid-corner wiggle.
In the corner.
Man,
Big
very
wiggle. But it's probably not going to help Lime Mitch too much because Lime Mitch had to get out the throttle.
Oh, no, don't roll this out. Here they go.
Kilometers an hour. Oh, my goodness. But Lime Mitch makes it back. That was very, very brave.
Oh, right round the outside, just like the Buffalo Bills like to go around the outside. And he gets the job done.
Remember what you were saying earlier, guys, about willing participants?
Yes.
I think they both got very lucky there that each other realized that there was going to be a big crash because, by golly, that was close.
And I think
as the race goes on, people become less and less willing to put up with your shit in places like bus stop.
And I think Ozrob was probably looking at that. Oh, big wiggle for Lime Mitch too. And I think Ozrob was sitting back there wondering, how on earth did that not end in an accident?
Oh, I think Ozrob might have been almost flying by the seat of his pants as well, because if they got together, there might not have been any room for Ozrob to go through, but very lucky that everyone managed to get away from that one after what had transpired, and they're now in a very willing battle for what is effectively 4th place. They've dropped Hans from the rear, and they've kind of lost Lewis ahead, so this is the battle for the best of the rest, I guess you could call it, between Lime Mitch, Brendan Ross, and Ozrob.
Yeah, this is the one we're going to sort of keep focusing on. I mean, we keep focusing on it for a long time now, just mainly because they're all so close. There really isn't anybody else on the track that is so close.
Quite spread out, unfortunately, but this is a very good battle for 4th, 5th, and 6th at the moment.
Yeah. Well, we might just leave them for a minute. We'll do a quick stock take of where everybody sits in the order and what they've been up to. So, aside from the pit stops, Will Devonish has controlled this race from the get-go and continues to eke out a margin, a couple of tenths a lap, and is well and truly in command of this race. Huge 22 and a 3/4 second gap back to the champion in waiting, Steve Bolger, who really just wants to finish the race tonight. No pressure on him or Will Devonish or Brenton Foley for that matter. They were all safe for 1st, 2nd and 3rd place in the championship. This man wasn't safe, Lewis Wedding. He really needed a good result to make sure he didn't lose out his position in the championship, and he's doing a fine job sitting there in 3rd place right now in the standings. The top 3 have got plenty of racetrack to themselves, and then it's back to this trio, which Lime Mitch has just started to break away here from Brendan Ross and Ozrob. So 2 Silver Cup runners in this one, looking for top step in Silver Cup at the moment. That is in favour of the man aboard the 555 Gravel Shed Racing Lamborghini. Hans Brunswick, who had a fantastic first stint, has pretty much gone nowhere since the 30-minute mark of this race and has really petered off something drastic. Track violation on the last lap. Best lap is still pretty respectable at a 45.3, but his lap times have been well and truly into the 46s and high 47s.
Brendan Ross is going to be under pressure from Ozrob coming across the main straight. Got a big slide coming out of the final corner, but has managed to hold on. Sorry to interrupt that,
Yeah, right,
Nether.
you'll be all right for the minute. Zach Ross has gone about his business pretty quietly, although he has had a couple of hairy moments. But again, another one with a lonely race. Greg Turra moved his way up the order quite nicely, granted he's also been helped by a couple of the DNFs that have happened ahead of him as well, but he's done pretty well considering he had that collision with Matt Williams earlier on in the race. And then the last man inside the top 10 is Luke Joyner, minus his bonnet, or in the case of a Lamborghini, that's its trunk, because the engine is at the back of the Lamborghini. Speaking of Lamborghinis, in the middle, sorry. Speaking of Lamborghinis, we keep calling him Lewis Wedding. It's not Lewis Wedding. Will Devonish with the new fastest lap of the race. Cracker's still flying the flag for the BC Racing Dodge Viper team, and then other drivers still in the race. First man, 2 laps down is Turmo, then you got John McDonald and Rhodey are the last 2, although McDonald's had a moment in the
pits.
He tried to spin up the wheels and get out of his pit box and ran straight into what's left of Brian Walsh's Lamborghini there. How peculiar.
All right, well, let's have a look. So here it is. He's in the pit lane. We'll just fast forward a bit. Oh, there he... And that is not the way to exit the pits. And I'm going to use the cliche here that this is not iRacing.
I wonder if there may have been a little bit of a lag or freezing problem there, because it did look like the car just suddenly was jumping forwards a lot faster than it usually launches off the line.
How very peculiar. Gotta say, McDonald's done a fairly decent job so far. I think that's only his second pit stop of the race so far.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
he
gone
did
pretty
first
well.
on lap 22 and then again on lap 40.
Yeah, so one more stop for him will comfortably see him home. Lap times he's been doing, though, mind you, his best lap time is a 47.8, and he's been consistently in the 48s and 49s, so not blowing through the fuel as much as everybody else has been doing, because definitely not producing the same sort of lap time.
Actually, sorry, he pit on lap 4 as well. That's why.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that
so he
makes
has stopped
sense why
3
he
times.
lost it.
That'll probably been to do with maybe some damage or something there as well. So let's go back to the battle for 4th, 5th and 6th, which is currently just the battle for 5th and 6th at the moment, because Mitch has managed to get a very, very small margin and just a little bit of breathing room for a little bit here. Up through the toe of the boot.
Ross just had a bit of a slide mid-corner. I think Ross's balance must be off. He looks like he's losing the rears a bit more than the fronts at the moment. Seems to be getting a bit of a slide on in a lot of corners. And you can see there again, the rear wants to step out on the car. Maybe he's made a tire pressure adjustment in the last stop that's taken the car away from where he wants it, because he doesn't look nearly as comfortable on this set of tires as he did in the previous stint.
So I just like to. Sorry, I know we're doing rules. Just quickly, Will Devonish obviously still out in the lead, pulling away, but Lewis Wedding is consistently bringing in the gap to Steve Bolger about. Well, it's been more than half a second a lap for the last 4 laps.
Well, the last one was 8/10. The last one was a huge
that
jump.
is on pace to be right on the back of Steve Bolger, potentially before the end of this race, because there's still 1 round of pit stops left, and we know that Wedding is a little bit better on those pit stops. He's been gaining time on Bolger each pit stop.
And just to go along with that as well, Bolger had a track cut on this lap, so I think it was in sector 1, so maybe out of the first corner. So something's maybe a bit of that mental fatigue running for so long alone. We talked about the same thing with Brendan Ross earlier, that if you lose the groove through a pit stop or passing traffic, it's very hard to get back into it. And maybe that's happened to Bolger as well.
Here goes Rob going through the inner loop section of the circuit in pursuit of the 444 Bentley. Mitch a bit further ahead in the BMW. Just taking a look at some of the lines and listening to the application of the throttle, whether or not he's getting on the brake straight away or there's a little bit of lift and coast. And no, the answer is he's got full throttle and full brake, so you're not saving any fuel on this particular stint. Braking at the 200 board. Now, that's the interesting thing about circuits like this, gents. We often remark that we go to places in Australia and we have brake marker boards that are literally in meters. So you have, you have 150 meter board, your 100 board, your 50 meter board. They're all spaced meters apart. Different circuits in place in different parts of America have different ways of distinguishing how far you've got to go. In this case, we've got 200, 100, those sorts of things, but it looks like they're not exactly separated in feet either. And then you get some circuits where it just has 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Yeah, America's weird like that. I think it's because unlike Australia, where most circuits have a CAMS affiliation, so they tend to run similar sort of markings for major events. There's a lot of different local associations in America. As I'm just on board with Brendan Ross, he got a great run through the bridge, but he actually backed off there. He let Mitch go as they approached the bus stop. So maybe it's just one of those things where each local jurisdiction will have a way of doing things that's specific to the way that they want to. But I certainly prefer the actual meter number boards. I prefer having that actual information as opposed to an arbitrary 321 or something like that.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's a bit off-putting when you go to some of these different circuits and you think, oh yeah, I'll just stop here thinking that it's in feet or it's in meters, and then all of a sudden you find yourself sailing off into a sand trap or something.
Quite possibly. I'm just on board with Brendan Ross. I have been for the past lap or so, just trying to get a measure on how his tyres are. And what I mentioned earlier about him maybe losing the rears seems to be much more apparent on board than it is off board. using a lot of. It seems to be on corner entry. The rear seems to step out a lot on corner entry, and even in the last 2 or 3 corners, he's lost a great amount of time on line mix. Although both of them go wide through the penultimate corner, that's probably going to be a track cut for the pair of them. But again, Rossi sideways and makes contact with the wall that time, coming onto the back straight. So with 7 minutes left on this stint, you would expect not all seems to be well with these two big cars at the moment. And Ozrob is sitting patiently behind the pair of them, just sort of waiting for his moment, it looks like.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Bagsy, do you think that Rossi's asking a little bit too much of the car here? Do you think he's just trying to turn it in with a bit too much speed on, and just asking a little bit too much? The car just doesn't want to respond.
I think he's probably just, and it's probably for a lot of the mistakes I'm seeing, it's most likely a fatigue thing, because we are a very long way into this race, and it's going to happen because you can't concentrate on anything for that long and not start to make tiny little errors, because your brain's just not capable of laser focusing on things like this constantly. Just only takes little slips as well, as Ozrob is he's right there, but he's just not quite able to make anything happen with it.
Now, you're right about the track violations, Michael, because Lime Mitch and Brendan Ross both received them on that lap. Ozrob was the one that did not get it at 46.5. What's interesting, though, is these guys have been setting times that are in that sort of bracket. So Ozrob's lap times, when we take a look at them on live races, so for the live timing, it's amsoz.liveraces.com, been consistently in the 46s, sort of mid to, there's a low 46 in there, but mostly around the mid 46s. Then we take a look at Brendan Ross. Aside from that track cut that he got, his best lap in the last 5 laps is a 45.7. Again, mostly in the 46s. Lime Mitch doing his best to nick off, and again, also in the 46s. Hans Brunswick has been in the 46s as well. It's only just started to dip into the 45s.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And Hans has started to come back onto the tail of this group. He's now only 11 seconds behind the rear of Ozrob, just under 11 seconds. And we were saying that gap was somewhere between 14 and 13 earlier on. So he has started to just come back a little bit, but it might be a bit... he's got a yellow flag coming
just
in.
Up here, and it's Cracker.
And
he's just... Oh, no, he's coming to wrong man! Oh, no, and that's a huge accident. And that's not the fault of Brendan Ross either. That was a big, big accident and a very, very poor rejoin. And that has severely crippled Cracker's number 64 Dodge Viper. And we need to go back and have a little bit more of a look at what happened with that one. So here it is. So he's had a moment at the chicane, just got his braking all wrong. Now, he was in a safe spot here. He's gone to flick spin the car and get going and just pointed the wrong way. That's the critical moment, and then gassed it up, realised Lime Mitch was there, and then thought it was a gap. Oh, whack. I'm surprised that we're very lucky that didn't actually bring out the safety car, gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I think it was because Hans was so far behind, it didn't, and Cracker was off the track, is why we did get a safety car there. Yeah,
that is a huge, huge drama. That could have had massive implications for Brendan Ross had that have gone the wrong way. Rossi fighting away that top part of the championship, and that could have been all a huge problem.
Well, it actually might have implications for Brendan Rossi, because I'm not sure if his lap will count or not. I think he got a track cut on that lap, which means that was his 5th and final track cut. So any after this is going to give him a drive-through penalty.
Yeah, as well as compounding whatever tyre balance issues he was having now with some aero problems at the front after making contact. Could be even more strife for him in the latter half of this stint.
Yeah, we're getting down to this pit stop sequence probably in the next 5 or 10 minutes that we expect to happen. So from here onwards, we'll probably see a flurry of activity. If you pit after about 28 minutes, you should be right to get home.
Yeah, it depends on the person as well. I think at 30 minutes, you'd probably be okay to get home as well.
The lap runners,
most
for
people
sure.
With maybe a little bit of fuel saving.
Yeah, the lap runners for sure. When they get to 30 minutes, they'll be okay. But those guys that were a little bit
Greg
marginal...
Tara is in. So Greg Tara, I think, may be expecting to be lapped in this race and has decided to dive into the pits now.
Yeah, well, he's already a lap
And
down to the
remember-
race
He's
leader
already
anyway.
lapped,
Yeah.
apologies.
And remember, Tara was the first of the pit stoppers last stint because he had that accident just ahead of the hour. So that makes sense for him to be the first one into the pits.
Yeah, and he came in, what was it, about an hour and 5 minutes remaining on the clock.
Lap
So
29.
yeah, lap 29. So about the better part of 30-odd minutes ago. So it's no surprise that he's the first one that's come in for a stop. Geez, Lime Mitch has cleared out quickly after all that little kerfuffle as well. He's used that incident with Cracker to his advantage quite handsomely and has really put the hammer down to get going. Oh, Ozrob, late decision to go in. Very late decision to go in. So
That's a bold decision.
that's very bold, and that's going to allow Hans Brunswick to come through and go through to 6th place, albeit temporarily until the pit stops shake out. Let's watch this one with interest. Let's see how that pans out. Now,
Jeez, I think there may need to be some fuel saving Ozrock to make it to the end here,
Yeah.
or a splash and dash.
that's what I was a
We've-
bit worried
we've-
about coming in beforehand, because when you look at what happened, Brunswick had actually gained a fair bit of time because of those guys having to check up for Cracker through the bus stop chicane. So maybe that's why I think Ozrob thinks he might have been a bit vulnerable and wanted to come in a little bit earlier, maybe run in some clear air, and maybe he might do a bit of fuel saving. He's going to be very, very marginal here.
I'd say extremely marginal. We've seen Ozrob try this at other races and get burnt by it. I think for some reason Istanbul comes to mind, although I'm not 100% sure. But I do remember Ozrob getting close a few times and missing out. So this could play very much into Lime Mitch's hands, as we've still got more than a stint remaining. More than
Because we're expecting 68 or 69 laps, aren't we? So
Yeah.
that's 20 laps from now. And the only person we've seen get close to that was Lewis Wedding, his first stint of 19 laps plus the formation lap.
Yeah,
So
well, that means we're kind of expecting
And-
our race leader in very shortly then as well, because I mean he's on lap 50 at the moment. His last pit stop, Bagsy, was
lap 36.
like 36,
35.
35.
End
So
of
that's
35, so-
15,
Sorry, you're right.
15 laps ago. So that means
The thing
he...
is, Ozrob also didn't take tyres. So Ozrob
Oh, that's
saved
oh
a bunch of
danger.
money. But he's been looking after his tyres very well. They're in a lot better shape than a lot of other people's have been at the end of a stint. So I think he could. They're going to be very used in second hand by the end of the stint. But this is it's a roll of the dice for Ozrob. He's probably expecting to be going a bit slower because his tyres aren't going to be as fresh. So maybe that'll feed into his fuel saving and be able to make him go all the way to the end.
I don't know. I don't know. The thing is, I'd be comfortable with a driver trying to fuel save or tire save, but I don't think you could do both effectively enough to get to the end like that. I think if you're trying to do both, you're going to run into problems, especially around a track like this, which is so hard on both. It's going to be extremely marginal, and I hope he's played his cards right, because if he has to take a splash and dash, that could not only drop him behind, the Lime Mitch, the Brendan Rosses, but they could also even drop him further back behind Hans and Zach Ross, and that might be enough of a difference to run into Silver Cup championship problems if Lime Mitch is at the top of that group.
Yeah, now he is currently a lap down too, Ozrob. So he's the first car lap down, but he will get that lap back when all the other drivers ahead of him at the moment, so the top 7, come in to take their service, because they're all yet to stop. But the question, as you rightly pointed out now, Michael, is where he feeds back out, given that he's going to be running the older tyre set. If he can keep those in some shape, then he's just got to stay within, 2 or 3 finishing spots of Lime Mitch, and he'll be fine. But if that old tyre set causes him to go off the road or have a bad accident, that could change in a heartbeat. He could end up with some damage and could end up a lot further down the field.
I would almost guarantee the tyres are going to be a problem. I don't think it's going to be extremely marginal to see whether he gets home on tyres.
Just seeing as
As
well,
well
when
as
Brendan
yours.
Ross is in.
It's in the pits.
Yep, Brendan Ross, I've noticed, has just come into the lane, so that promotes Hans Brunswick now up to 5th place for the time being.
So at the moment, Ozrob is probably going to have about 8 or 9 seconds from Lime Mitch when
Yep.
Lime Mitch finally pits.
So Bolger looks like he'll be in this lap, surrounding the last couple of corners. Now, what we might do in the next 5 minutes or so is just take a very, very short break. There's just a couple little dramas that are starting to unfold here on our broadcast pictures and just allow us some time to clear those up. But we'll just see Steve Bolger come in to take his service. And there he is. So what we will do for the next few moments is we'll just take a very, very short step away, resolve a couple of minor dramas that we're just having go on at the moment. And we'll be back to live pitches in just a few moments. So, gents, just keep an eye on what's going on for me here.
Wedding has just hit from 3rd place, so he will be going to the end from here.
Yep, so we're now down to about 27 minutes or so remaining, which means you can get home from here quite comfortably on this stint. We'll back calculate the times in just a few moments and see how we're going. What do you
Steve Bolger's also come through the pits, so they're both in the lane, Wedding and Bolger.
Now, this is going to be interesting to see what the time difference is when Bolger leaves, because Lime Mitch is also coming in behind here, and Lime Mitch could be a bit of a problem for Bolger if he gets away now. He's got Lime Mitch in front of him, so he's going to have to just ease off a little bit. So that's a couple of seconds lost right there.
Maybe not seconds, maybe tenths of seconds. It'll be closer between Bolger and Wedding, I think, but the gap between the two of them coming into the pits was in excess of
About
12
seconds.
Yeah,
16 seconds away.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, just apologies, guys, for the guys in the live stream. We're just having a little bit of a little technical drama, so we are just electing to solve that before we bring the live pitches back. It's just something that we have seen and just anticipated. And that is the game just reconnecting in the background there. So we'll hopefully have some live pitches and some timing back for you in just a few minutes.
So interestingly, while you're sorting that out now, the gap between Ozrob and Brendan Ross is something like 15 seconds that Ozrob has gained in that pit, that by taking that pit stop early and staying on those tyres. In fact, he's rounded up Lime Mitch quite easily as well. So that's quite a hefty gap to hold. It'll be a matter now of whether or not he can hold on to that to the end, whether or not the degradation is enough.
Yeah.
And
so Lime Mitch has come out only 2 seconds ahead of Brendan Ross, so that's going to be very interesting to the end as well.
That is. Now, just apologies, guys. Given the technical gremlins that we do often have with Automobilista, we have lost our live timing just on the the left-hand side of the page there. So we will continue to bring you updates from what is going on with live races, which will give us the picture of where everything stands. At the moment, top 3, Will Devonish yet to stop.
Ooh,
Hans Brunswick
Brendan Ross,
yet
drive
to
through
stop.
penalty. Brendan Ross.
There we go. So that's the first strike in this little chain, and that will be a track strike for Brendan Ross. So we bring up our replay machine here, and here he is on the run down to the bus stop chicane. I say this is probably going to be over the last part of the chicane. And we did say that this was going to be interesting right to the very end. And, oh yeah, got it well out of control. It'll be the second part of the chicane and the third one as well. So he would have been well out of control.
He might have even gotten 2 there, because we mentioned he was on his last one before, and if he's gone off in the middle part and then again on the exit, you can get 2 track cut violations in quick succession there. So we might even have 2 penalties to serve, which will definitely change the face of the mid-pack of the race. Unfortunate for Rossi how that's worked out for him.
Yeah, that's huge, and he'd probably better off serving that right now, getting it over and done with, and then just getting back out, because where he is currently on the track, he's currently in 7th place, and Luke Joyner is, well, he's behind him on track. As Rossi comes into the lane, here is Luke Joyner actually. So he'll lose a position here, I think, or unless Joyner comes in to take a stop. So I think
he's lost the position for Hans Brunswick now, who just took his pit stop.
Yep, so that's an effective change of position as Joyner comes in.
Also,
and there
Hans,
goes Brunswick,
who has closed right in on Lime Mitch in that round of pit stops. There is a lot less time between them. There is a visual distance now when we're looking at Lime Mitch to Hans Brunswick, but it was a lot further away before.
Did Hans take tyres?
He did.
Okay, well then that's a massive gain back in the pits. He must have
I think there was
conserved
some
fuel quite
serious,
aggressively.
some serious fuel saving.
Yeah,
Intriguing stuff as we come to the tail end of the GT3 World Challenge season for 2020. I'm surprised he's managed to claw back that much, because that's about 10 seconds that he's gained back 8 seconds that he's gained back on Lime Mitch.
Yeah, let's have a look what the margin is out there on the track at the minute. So we look at Brunswick, who he's on an outlap at the moment as well. Lime Mitch is up the road to the tune of still a fair margin. So
it's about 5 seconds now. So that those tires coming up to temperature
a little bit
behind,
more than that,
it's taking a little longer.
Lime Mitch is still having a few little wiggles here. He knows that he's got to just at least apply a little bit of pressure to his own driving here and just maintain that gap. He doesn't want to have no margin when it comes to having an accident or having a bit of a moment somewhere. He needs to have a bit of a buffer zone, because all it takes is for a little off-track excursion. Hans is going to be right there.
And not only that as well, Mitch is looking ahead to the tail of Ozrob. It's 13.5 seconds now. Remember, we were saying that the gap between Rob and Brendan Ross was something to the tune of 15 seconds. So it's come down already by about 1 or 2 seconds. But is Ozrob going to run out of laps? Is Lime Mitch going to run out of laps to chase down that Lamborghini for 4th place?
Well, he's got 22 minutes to do it. And
just looking at Wedding's times, he ended up slightly further back from Steve Bolger after that pit stop sequence, so he didn't do too well for himself there. Unfortunately, it's going to be a big struggle for him to get back or get to Steve Bolger before the end of this race, and definitely not the pace he's currently running at.
No, definitely not. Race leaders completed 54 laps and still think we're on track to get into the high 60s for lap times. Margin out in front pretty much the same as what it's been for most of the race. In actual fact, it's still getting more and more and more as Devonish has taken his stop the last time around. So he managed to get all the way to all of about 23 minutes remaining on the clock before taking his final stop, and that's despite punching out lap times, as you can see there, in the 44s. His best lap was 44.106, but he's been regularly punching out times all over the 44s.
He's just been in that groove. It's just been amazing to watch. We haven't given him too much TV time because of some of the battling further down the field, but he has just been metronomic with his pace. Remember the beginning of last stint, he was putting in 44s on full fuel with the brand new tyres as well. So he's got that Lamborghini hooked up to a T around here, and he's enjoying it.
Moment for Turmo just ahead of him as well, that we just caught with the yellow flag that happened there. Possibly caught out by this rotten bump. And yep. Brendan Ross has been disqualified. Okay, so that would mean that he has, as Tomo comes in for a stop, that would mean that he has not been able to serve the drive-through penalty, or the drive-through penalty has not been recognised properly. So that's huge.
He got two.
There you go.
Exactly what I thought. He got one on the entry to the bus stop and on the exit, and he only served one of them. So the game has pinged him for it and, relegated him from the race. So really unfortunate for Rossi there. He was in a great position early on and at a great mid part of the race, but unfortunately one of those AMS things where he got two. It was blink and you miss it sort of stuff with when the penalties came up. So obviously he's missed one, and unfortunate to get disqualified for that.
Yeah, that's a bit of a tough one to swallow, I think, as well, where he was in the championship. So that is definitely some championship implications there. 19.5 minutes remains now.
Lewis
and
Wedding's definitely going to jump ahead of him from that now.
Yeah, he certainly is. Wedding's, or third place for Wedding is more than enough for this particular occasion.
I believe Lime Mitch may as well. He is 12 points behind Brendan Ross.
Yeah, so 25 points for a race win, and with Lime Mitch now being in 5th place, so that's going to net him, it's going to be, just off the top of my head, I can't remember how much is awarded for 5th place on the standings.
Should be 12 points.
Yeah, it's 25 for a win, 20 for 2nd place. Okay, I think it's 16 for 3rd. So it could go, so if it's 12 points difference, it could go to a countback as to who's got the better result.
Intriguing stuff to ponder at the end of the season.
Yeah, we will do the math on that one as when the podium interviews are taking place, so we can give you the provisional standings at the end of the championship. Rossi's also having a look in there, saying that in the chat, saying that he took his drive-through and Well, we did see you take the drive through, Rossi. What we believe may have happened is that you may have had a second one for cutting the second part of the chicane and probably not been seen by the game. So that'll be, again, another item we have a look at in the race results and in the race chat to see what happened on that particular occasion. Well, all battles on track, gentlemen, have pretty much really settled down, and there really isn't a huge amount going on now.
Yeah, this is one of those things about the long-form GT3 racing. Sometimes you can get into a situation where everyone's sort of in their own race. But for me, this is where the endurance stuff really comes into it, because you find battles on the timing screen, and the one that I'm watching at the moment is that battle for 4th place between Ozrob, who, remember, didn't take tyres at the last stop, and Lime Mitch. That gap that I made mention of being about 11.5 seconds or 12.5 seconds, only a lap ago, is now down to just over 10 seconds. And in that time as well, Ozrob has picked up a track cut violation. So last lap around, it was a 47.2 for Ozrob, compares to a 45.7 for Lime Mitch. So that gap is coming down hand over fist. And with about 10 laps left in this race, that could be a grandstand finish between the two Silver Cup runners.
Yeah, I think it's about the length of the front straight is the difference between these guys at the minute. We were just waiting to see if Lime Mitch emerged into back a shot coming over the top of the hill on the run to bus stop, but he didn't. So Ozrob's now down to the bottom part of the circuit, and Lime Mitch is just coming out of the inner loop. So that gives you an idea of how far apart these guys are without having the live timing references to look at. Top three and truly settled.
It's now under 10 seconds for that gap. So again, another 0.4 of a second just in Sector 1 alone. So that gap is coming down, and we should be able to see...
Drive-through penalty, Hans Brunswick. Now, that's a track cut as well. So that's up at the, just exiting the bus stop chicane. So I was looking on the screen to see he'd actually gone, according to our screens, the gap to lead for him was a lap down. So that's a bit of a strange one. I'm not sure what happened to him on that occasion, but that must mean he's fallen well out of favour with the timing screens. As,
I think there's every chance that Lime Mitch
will
potentially get lapped by the end. I mean, actually probably only 15 minutes left, but it could be close for Lime Mitch or Ozrob being lapped by the end of this race, especially since Ozrob's pace is going to be a lot slower. This is why I talk about Will Devonish for a second, because we have neglected him a little bit on the broadcast because he's dominating so much, and it reminds me of just flicking through my little book of all the results and all the pit stops that I have for all the races I've commentated. And in the 2 hours of Bathurst, it was very much like this. In these long-form endurance events, Will Devonish is the one to beat. He just is able to knock out these laps consistently. In Bathurst, he was a second ahead in qualifying and had no peer throughout the race. And today, he was almost a second ahead in qualifying, or 0.6. It would have been 0.8 if not for a last gasp air from Bolger. And he's just been in control this whole race, and it's never been in doubt so far. He's almost lapped. Well, he's lapped 75% of the field at this point, and you just think if the race kept going, he'd eventually have just lapped everyone with no issue, because he's just hitting his marks every time and not taking any crap from anyone. He's lapping traffic effectively. He's just done really well, and it's a shame that I think over the course of the season, I still think Bolger would have had him, but in these longer form endurance events, he is definitely the king of the long form endurance here.
Absolutely. It might be a bit of a mindset thing, because as you said, at Bathurst, he was absolutely peerless. But in the shorter events, Austria comes to mind, he almost seemed to get a bit nervous and make mistakes that you wouldn't expect from him. So I think Will, certainly in the longer form events, he has the ability to just get into that zone and get into that mindset where nothing phases him. So definitely look for him come the end of the year when we do the what are we doing? The big three?
The Triple Crown, the Endurance Triple Crown comes up at the end of the year. So we've got the Sprint Series to get through for the next couple of months, and then there's 3 events to finish out the year. October, November and December. we have 3 races. They're all going to be on weekends as well, so a little bit of extra time because they are 3-hour events and they are endurance format events. We have yet to decide whether or not we want to allow drivers to run them solo, or whether we're forcing the teaming up. But essentially we're going to be running the Triple Crown involving 3 hours at Daytona, 3 hours at Le Mans, and 3 hours at Bathurst. So we have run a Bathurst 3-hour in the past as well. That was back at the beginning of 2019. So the 3-hour format is definitely something we have done before, but not with 3 races over 3 consecutive months. And the time between those events is to allow people enough time to get used to running the longer format, or the longest of all the formats we've ever run.
Just winding us back to this race, sorry to jump into the top of your bag, Z. It looks like Ozrob's tyres have hit that cliff last lap around a 50.8 compared to a 46.1 for Lime Mitch. And that was after losing a gap in the previous lap around.
Really close now.
You can see it now in the background as we're just watching Ozrob come through the final corner, and there is that lime green BMW. So 12 minutes left, and he's coming into the pits.
Yep, he's realised the gig was up. He needed to take tyres on the last stop.
Otherwise he's going to lose out to Zach Ross and Hans Brunswick as well.
Yeah, Zach Ross probably so. Hans Brunswick, I think, might be a bit too far back, just given that he had to take that stop as well. Now, Ross and
there's Will Devonish who just passed Ozrob.
Yeah, Ross and Brunswick are they're a lap down to the race leader, but you're right, they are fighting for position against Ozrob at the moment. Now, Zach Ross will get this job done pretty easily, I think.
I think Ozrob might have put fuel in the car as well. I think he's sitting there for a very long time.
Yeah, and remember that it's a whole case of they change the tyres, but then they also do the fuel, but it's all separate. It's not concurrent. So
maybe because
Ross
it's a fourth stop,
he's going to lose it to Hans Brunswick. So there you go.
Oh, wow. Yeah, maybe because it's his fourth stop of the night, he might not have it set up the way that he would have wanted pre-race, which you can do in Automobilista. So yeah, maybe he's had some sort of pit stop error that's meant that he's overfueled the car. He might even, he's going to come out just adjacent to his teammate Steve Bolger, so to put him a lap down.
You won't hold him up too much here because Wedding is closing in a little bit.
Now, this is interesting too because Limitz is now up to 4th place. That puts Ozrob down to 7th. Now, we're going to have to do the math here. I think
Ozrob's still okay.
Ozrob should still be okay to the tune of about half a dozen points, I think.
It's 16 points between them.
Yeah,
so
16 between them, and Limitz
needed. I believe Limitz needed 2nd place and a DNF. Ozrob.
Yeah, I think he's on about 12 points or so, I think, at the moment. So I think Ozrob, by finishing in 7th place, should garner about 8 points or so from memory. So he'll be right by about 8 points.
So we'll definitely just lapped everyone up to 5th, everyone up to and including 5th place now.
Correct.
I was once again going through all my results, and I write little notes down for each race and stuff that happens. And so many of these shorter form ones, it's like, oh, Will Devonish, good recovery driver, or Will Devonish recovered from this. And it's sort of like, if he was able to get those shorter forms, a bit more patience, I think he might lack in some of these shorter form events. He's excellent and patient in these longer events, but he doesn't translate into the shorter events. So we'll see how he fares in the sprint series in comparison, because he does tend to be a little bit over aggressive sometimes when he doesn't need to be in the shorter form of racing here.
Yeah, that'll be the interesting one to see how he goes. Now that he's missed out on the World Series crown, how he turns his attention to the sprint racing part. Now, we know he's a pretty quick peddler in series like supercars, especially in the sprint race format, but how is that going to translate into a completely different type of machinery, and especially on some of the tracks that we're going to as well. And they've all got their different characteristics as well. You take Phillip Island, has got that sort of flow. Road Atlanta has got a huge amount of elevation change. Suzuka, well, it's a Grand Prix track. There's a lot of different corners there as well. Some hard stops, some flat out bends. The challenges of a double apex type arrangement like Spoon Corner. The Bend, which we've never been to with GT3 machinery as well, has its own challenges where it's got a little bit of everything. The Sprint Series is going to set up to be a rather unique type of series in its own right, because it's the first type of series that hasn't had a race longer than 60 minutes. Like the minimum race time that we've had for GT3s and endurance championships in general has been 60 minutes with your 90-minute and 120-minute events. But this will be the first time we've only had races of a half an hour, taking all the strategy element out of the equation as well. So bit of adaptation for everybody to get used to, and in a very short space of time.
Yeah, it'll be a bit of that adaptation for us as well. I don't think I've ever seen any GT racing which has not had a pit stop strategy element behind it. So that'll be something very, very new for me. I wonder, I've had this conversation with Lewis Wedding. I wonder if it's almost worth turning the tyre degradation for the sprint series up to 3 as opposed to its normal setting of 2, just to really emphasize tire wear and maybe make the back end of races a bit more exciting. So I'll see if I can twist his arm and get him to do that, despite how much people might hate me at the end of it. But yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see how these cars, which are so well built for an endurance aspect, go in such a compressed format. And also two races a night really gives you an opportunity to set things right if you have a poor race to start off with. So yeah, exciting times ahead.
Yeah,
Is it two qualifyings for the 2 races?
No, I believe we're going with a progressive grid format. So you'll end up, if you have a poor qualifying, you'll have a chance to fight your way through the order and then have a chance to start from where you finished in the second race. And I guess that's if people are poor qualifiers or they don't particularly drive the car very, very hard over a single lap, that they have a bit better race pace to reward it in that fashion. There's no reverse grids or anything like that, but my understanding is it's going to a progressive grid format for the second race. And
That's going to be...
Yeah, it's going to be a big one. And throw that in, that there's also a couple of dusk or night events going in there as well. So Suzuka is slated to be an afternoon into dusk event, and I believe Bahrain is going to be dusk into night. So, and we have tested the lighting. I have tested it under floodlights at Bahrain, and it looks absolutely spectacular. It looks just as good as Abu Dhabi was when we did that event last year.
Something that is progressive as well as the qualifying for the second races in Sprint Series is...
Tomo's had a moment. Tomo's had a big moment there. It was just sort of little, as we cut to line, Mitch, we had a yellow flag out there on the track, and Tomo's nose into the wall kick at the outer loop.
He's staying out of the way for people for the most part, so well done there for Tomo. Good situational awareness.
He is.
Something that's closing.
He just got on the 2 tires onto the curb on the inside, going through the outer loop, and that was enough to lose the rear of the car and pitch him into the wall.
And overcorrected too, and a pretty hard lick as well. So
Hans Brunswick is being caught up by both Osrob and Bolger's coming up to lap him, but Osrob is closing over at a large rate of knots. Last lap of 148 versus a 146.5, so a second and a half in that last lap.
Yeah, it was 5 minutes left on the clock now.
To go. Yeah.
That could certainly come close at the end. 5 minutes is probably going to work out to be about three or four laps, depending on where Devonish is on the circuit, and he's just coming up to the control line now. So if Osrob is able to grab a second and a half for the next 3 laps, that's going to be nose to tail coming across the line to maybe start the final lap. So again, finding battles on the timing screens as we approach the final throws of the GT3 World Challenge Series.
Yeah, so just looking at live races being about 10 or so seconds behind the live action, which in turn is about 15 seconds behind the live stream, because that's what the delay is. Will Devonish got to the line with about 4 minutes 38 remaining. So doing the math at a minute 44 a lap, that sort of gives us at least another 4 laps of this race to go, which means we get to about the lap we're on currently now is lap 65, so that gets us to 69.
Are we going to expect anyone to be in fuel trouble, Bagsy? Do you reckon pitting, the earliest pit stopper was Greg Turrow, but of the guys that we've seen, Brendan Ross in an lap 50 and most of the other major players in a lap 51, do you reckon there's going to be fuel trouble if Devonish gets over the line to start lap 69 rather?
I think potentially Will Devonish is not going to have a problem, so he can keep pushing, and that could put some other people over the edge. Yeah, Brendan Ross and Zach Ross are the two who pit on lap 50. So they're the ones who'd be closest to having trouble. Everyone else should be fine to the end.
Yeah, the only other person that did have the question mark over their head was Ozrob, and we now understand why that was the case. He also had the tyre drama as well as coming in early, but he's now solved that equation by coming in and taking service, so he's definitely 100% right to the end now. The gap to him, to Hans Brunswick, is definitely visual, and I'm wondering whether or not he's going to get a little bit of assistance from Steve Bolger here, whether Steve's going to try and get up to the back. As we say that, has a mid-corner wiggle leaving the toe of the boot. Whether he's going to get up to the back of Hans Brunswick, get those blue flags, get him to move out the way, and then maybe hold him up a little bit for a teammate to get past.
Yeah, he's going to need a little bit of help because it doesn't look like he's quite dragging in the 1.5 seconds a lap that we saw 1 or 2 laps ago. Last time around, a 47
Although it looks like
46.1.
Looks like Hans has lost a lot in this final sector, potentially.
Yeah, the Sector 1 times were pretty comparable. It was a 10th in favour of Brunswick. Sector 2 was 2/10 in favour of Ozrob. And there's cars go across the line here. So Brunswick across the line now, and Ozrob not too far behind.
And there's 7/10 that sector. 7/10. There's 3 seconds. So there is your second and a half.
There's blue flags.
Brunswick's had to duck out of the way to get Bolger to go past, and that's going to be a big target now on the rear of that Wedding Crashers Motorsport Lamborghini for Ozrob to chase, as we've got 1 minute and 45 seconds left in this race. So possibly 2 laps. So it's going to be very, very tight.
Yeah, it will be 2 more laps remaining. Devonish is just
like
exited.
2.5
Is in the heel.
guys.
Yeah, is in the heel of the boot at the moment. So it's going to be this lap when Devonish gets to the line plus 1 more. And again,
1.5 seconds between these two now.
Also, Zach Ross won't have to worry about fuel because he's a lap down now, so he's going to be fine to the end.
Yeah, keep an eye on this one. Now, Bolger's not holding up Hans at the moment, which is what I thought he might try and do, but he's actually decided to just put the hammer down and keep going. So
I don't think Hans can keep up with Bolger enough for that to matter at the moment. It's almost nose to tail now coming out of the boot. Or coming out of the toe, rather. It's only about 4 or 5 car lengths. We'll see what the times are at the next sector split, and it's going to be less than a second, certainly. It's half a second between these 2 Lamborghinis coming into the heel. So Hans has got to hold on for 2 more laps in this wounded state. And if it's,
I don't think it's going to happen.
He's under massive siege here from the 555 Lamborghini. The move might get done here at the second to last corner if Ozrob can commit hard enough, but no, you need to be on the line there.
He knows he's got better tyres and is much more confident in his car than Hans is. He can take, he can't take all the time. He's got 2 laps, but he can pick where he wants to do it.
That's
it. He can throw a dart at a dartboard with all the corners on it and say, I want this one.
Now, I'm just looking at something here, gents. Lime Mitch is coming under some pressure from our race leader, Will Devonish, at the moment. So Lime Mitch has really fallen off the pace here. His lap times have gone into the 47s. He's going to go a lap down, which means all but the top 3 are going to finish on this lead lap.
That may be intentional for Lime Mitch if he felt he was in fuel trouble.
Yeah, don't need to worry about fuel.
True.
Yeah, all of a sudden
that's
have
a good point.
less.
The penny's just dropped.
It's still saying that though. That's an absolute immaculate effort from Will Devonish to lap all but the top 3. That's incredible sort of driving. That's the sort of result you only see at like 24-hour events or something like that.
Well, we've got the
Hans has managed to hold off Ozrob through the bus stop chicane.
1.5 laps to go. Now, Will Devonish is going to get the white flag this time around. So there he goes. So this is his this is his 68th lap. Sorry, I got my math a little bit wrong. Live races is a little bit different to what's on AMS. Normally it tells you what lap is completed, and then it means the lap that you're on crosses the line. So live race is a little bit different. So 68 laps the duration, still well inside our window. As we go back to this battle, we're going to keep an eye on not only the race leader, but we're going to keep an eye on this battle for 6th place, because this is the only real battle that's left on the track at the moment. I think the other one is John McDonald and Turmo.
It's one of those things, the whole catching is one thing, passing is another. It's a little bit of a cliche in racing, but Ozrob, despite his massive closing pace, still has not found somewhere to put that car. And it is still 2 Lamborghinis, so they're very similarly matched. Well, they're identical, aren't they? Yeah. But it's all about their setup and how they run it. And maybe Hans is running just that little bit less downforce and So Osrob's able to catch in the corners but can't quite get past him. We'll see. This is going to be his best opportunity because this is his last lap to make a move.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Hans has
just
got a
that
nice
last
little
lap
margin
around.
here.
Yeah, sorry, no, the last lap around, 46.2 for Hans, a 46.1 for Osrob. So Hans has actually found something here. He's fully responded now, and with almost 2/3 of the lap to go, it's going to be nose to tail throughout the rest of the lap.
He's safe for the minute. Let's go and pick up our race leader crossing the finish line here. He's got 2 more corners to go. He's managed to negotiate the last little bit of the lap traffic safely. So there'll be another win to Will Devenish. So he won the Bathurst race, and he's going to win this one, the 2-hour event at Watkins Glen. Goes to Wedding Crashers Motorsport and Lamborghini. So great job there. Bolger will be safe in second. Wedding will be safe for third. Limeich is lapped for fourth. But now the real battle is back to the 6th place. So Zach Ross is also safe for 5th. Now,
Osrob is right there. He is on the back.
Got to have a go.
Make a move here.
Got to have a go down here into the heel.
Oh, he's hit him. There's been a bump, and that's going to potentially give Hans, because really Osrob shouldn't pass right now just because he affected Hans's line. But now that should give the
one more opportunity. One more opportunity. It's got to be right here, right now.
Do you want to go here or do you want to wait? He's going to try and get Hans off line.
He covered it, and Hans will now be a little bit wide of the line. Oh, big moment! Big moment, and he cedes 6th place at the death to Osrob, and that pressure was all but implied by Osrob. There was the bit of the bump down at the heel, and Hans Brunswick loses 6th place on the last lap. Between the final two corners. So here it is again. Round the final corner, got on the curb, overcorrected. He was home and hosed. He just needed to release the throttle. He didn't need to apply that one. He just, as they say, if you're going to go for a spin, you just remove what has caused the spin in the first place, and usually that's the accelerator pedal, and that car's just swapped ends, and he overcorrected it.
Do you know what I think it was as well? It was because he had to do that little defensive move into the penultimate corner, and Osrob was able to take the proper line, and Hans was slightly off his regular line, which just pushed him that little bit wider than normal. So instead of being able to get on the throttle where he normally was, he was getting on the throttle slightly on the curb, and that's just what pitched it out and lost him that position. So it's so unfortunate, but a very exciting end for that place there, and well done to Osrob.
Yeah, final finishing positions inside the 10 as well. Greg Tara getting home for 8th, Luke Joyner 9th, Cracker 10th. I'm pretty sure that's Cracker's best result of the World Series as well. And then the last few finishes were John McDonald, Termo, and Rhodey, with all 3 of those guys actually and including Cracker being 3 laps down at the checkered flag. And with that, we end the GT3 World Series for 2020. A very much well-deserved champion at the end of that one. A dominant win for Will Devenish, and to go, I guess, with his domination aside from the safety cars at Bathurst, he pretty much dominated that event as well. So the 2-hour event, the longer format, certainly more akin to Will Devenish than the intermediate and the shorter events in this particular series, gents.
Yeah, and we've got Will Devenish in the booth with us now. We can ask him that directly. But first off, Will Devenish, absolutely immaculate performance from you tonight, winning the race by some 35-40 seconds, lapping everyone except the top 3. It was a decent night out at the office.
Yeah, bit surprised, given we didn't have a lot of practice for this, but the moment we rocked up, the car was just bang on, and it just suits this track so much. It was, I hate to say it, but somewhat easy to just pull it around lap after lap.
Or you're making a few of the people a bit further down the field maybe a little jealous and a little envious because of that statement. But in saying that, though, you were absolutely metronomic. Like 80% of your laps were in the 44s. Did you... We talked about it a bit in the broadcast, and you might have heard us talk about it then. The 2 endurance races we've had this season, you've been utterly untouchable, whereas in the sprint rounds, you've had a bit more, let's call them lively races. Is there a different mindset going into each of the 2 races, and why do you think you've had a bit more success with the endurance races compared to the more sprint-orientated races?
I think it's a bit of the tracks. I went to Bathurst, and I told the guys a few weeks before we went, I'm going to win that race. Like I was never gonna. I was hell bent on winning that race. And tonight, even though it doesn't seem like it, this track and Bathurst are sort of similar. They're very flowing tracks, which really suit the car. So, yeah, they both ended up being the longer format. But I think it was just the track and the car combination worked really well with these longer races.
So nothing about the race length then, nothing about perhaps being more frantic in one of the shorter races?
I think I've been pretty unlucky. But on my own accord with the shorter races, I'd stuffed myself up and had to fight my way back through the field. So, admittedly, if all the races were 2 hours, I probably could have had a bit more of a crack at this championship with the charges I've been able to make through the field. But yeah, the two 2 hour races we've had, able to start at the start and not really stuff it up. So it was sort of the season that was, and season that could have been this series. But we'll see what happens next for the shorter races coming up.
It was the series that could have been, but you still took home a very convincing second place finish. Looking ahead to the sprint series, are you excited to resume that battle with Bolger and maybe try and one up him in the shorter races?
Yeah, it'll be interesting having such a different format for GT3, the 30-minute races. I know Steve and Lewis are looking at fuel for those because a lot of the cars might struggle to make it on fuel. But I think that might make it quite exciting. A bit of a fuel race, bit of a sprint format might be really exciting. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Fantastic! Congratulations on your win this evening, Will, and your second place overall for the World Series Championship.
Thank you.
Do we have Steve Bolger in the booth? Is he still remonstrating in the racetrack channel at the moment?
I think he's currently down there popping a cork on a champagne bottle at the minute. So someone's going to have to get him. So we might let Bagsy have a chin wag to Lewis Wedding, I think.
Yeah, it was third place today, and seemed like a little bit of a lonely race for a while for you. You had that battle at the start as well. It was probably the most exciting race. Did you ever think you'd get to Bolger in front of you in second?
Well, I didn't know what my pace was. The first stint, I was just massively fuel saving because I saw in practice I'd make about 30 minutes, and with the formation lap, again, I didn't want to cut myself a little bit short and having to save later on. I just wanted to have a big save in the first stint and just push for the rest of the race, which was okay, except for the fact I saved, I think, a little bit too much, and I gave myself too much work to do afterwards. But that said, I mean, it took me until about halfway through the race to sort of figure out how to actually drive the car around the track because I'd only done about 10 laps of practice in the half hour beforehand.
Yes, fair enough. We did see that you were fuel saving a fair bit. During the third stint, we saw you were closing pretty consistently on Bolger, anywhere from half a second to about 0.8 a lap. And then you seemed to lose a bit in the third pit stop. And in that fourth stint, weren't really able to make too many inroads. Were you just was Bolger just picked up the pace a bit, or just not quite have the same pace in the final stint?
Well, I still closed in I think it was the second pit stop. I think we both sort of did the same thing where we short in one of the pit stops anyway. Both short fueled a little bit, so that's why we pitted at the same time. We both put the same amount of fuel in. I didn't lose any time with the pit stops. I did close slightly, but again, the Mercedes is a bit wobbly and inconsistent at points, especially probably about 2/5 the way through the stint. You'd get through the good phase where your tires would be really good, and then you'd still have a fair amount of fuel in the tank, and then my tires at that stage would sort of be a little bit worn. So that sort of stage, I'd lose out a little bit, and then towards the end, I'd close it back down again. But I just left myself too much work to do at the end. But in any case, it left me a carrot just to keep going and pushing, because after I dropped Ozrob and all those guys behind, it was just it was nothing around me for the rest of the race.
Yeah, a very well-run race, especially considering basically no practice. So congratulations on the podium. And I'll hand it back to Michael to interview our second place podium sitter today and new champion, the GT3 World Challenge Series, Steve Bolger.
Thank you, Bagsy. Bolger, yeah, a bit of a lonely race for you. It didn't really have too much going on behind you, but Will Devonish strung very far out in front. Just take us through the race from your perspective.
It was extremely lonely. The first lap was, trying to stick it up the inside of Wilkes. I thought if we got in front, there might be some chance, because I knew his pace in practice was way, way in front. But after the first few laps, there was nothing there, and it was just like a 2-hour practice session.
Talk through the mentality of that sort of race when you've got no real chance of running down the guy in front and no real threat from behind. How do you cope with a 2-hour event where you're basically running practice laps?
If it wasn't for a few of the boys in chat just keeping a bit of banter going, it would have been, there was a few micro sleeps going on. I think it was, the back half of the race got really, I was waiting for wanting the end to come pretty quick, and I think I was just losing concentration there. I think coming to the last pit stop, I thought Lewis was going to have a quicker pit stop than me, so I was just keeping a gap. I didn't want to get down too low, and then once it was still where it was after the pit stop, it was just pretty much don't lose too many seconds in one lap.
Fair enough. We'll talk about a bit more exciting stuff. We'll leave that race well enough alone. This season for you has been a breakout season in AMS Oz. You've had a podium, I believe, in every single race of the season, including a quadrant of wins, a quartet of wins.
That is correct. He's
there you go.
Is 4 wins and 5 second. Sorry, 4 wins and hang on. Yeah, 4 wins and 5 second places. Correct. Yep.
Yeah, an amazing season from you. Just a few comments from yourself just on this season, and maybe some of your favorite memories from this season, because it has been a phenomenal performance from you.
Absolutely wrapped. I think probably best moment of the season. Well, Monza is a highlight just because I set out for the whole event with a fuel strategy, and it turned out that it came down to that sort of run at the end. I couldn't have imagined it finishing that way. I thought it was just going to be, a few seconds different in the pit stops, not the finish that it was. So that was really exciting. But I guess Austria, first win, win from pole. After a couple of close seconds, I think was needed to get a monkey off the back. So that was a relief as much as anything. That was my probably biggest highlight of the season.
Awesome. That was a great race as well. And hard to believe that race back in Austria was already back in April, so like 2 months ago. So it's been a cracking season from you. Now, looking ahead to the sprint series, you'll have the number 1 on the side of your car. You've just been told in the live chat from Rossi, he's relinquishing that to you. How does the mindset change from these longer form endurance races to a double 30-minute hit out each night for the sprint series?
Massively different. So, really like the endurance races. Bit of strategy in it. You can drive at 90% and sort of fuel save and do some stuff there. A sprint race, fuel's not going to be a factor. It's just going to be hell for leather. So it'll be hopefully a bit more door-to-door action than some of the other races. They've been interesting from a strategy perspective, but not a huge amount of door-to-door stuff. So really keen for that. I was almost not going to run the sprint series, but given how this series has gone, absolutely will be.
Do you feel like you might have a bit of a target on your back now, having the number 1?
I imagine so. Look, it's just a very different type of racing. So I think, I'm not heading into that series thinking I'm any type of favourite. I think the Porsches will go really well. Will, obviously, and a few of the guys changing cars will hopefully shows up some surprises and mixed results.
Awesome. Once again, congratulations, not only for your second place tonight, but for an immaculate GT3 World Challenge Series to season champion Steve Bolger.
Thanks, mate. Great call all season, guys, and thanks very much.
Thank you. I'll hand it back to Nether.
Thanks, Jensen. Thanks to the top three for joining us for a little chat, as they always do after every race. So big thanks to drivers for putting on such a great show. World Series ends with 6 different podium sitters across the 9 races, with the race wins having been shared between 5 of those podium sitters. 4 to Steve Bolger, 2 to Will Devenish, and 1 apiece to Brenton Foley, Pete Savage, and Lewis Wedding, who won the very first race of the GT3 World Series all the way back at Silverstone at the beginning of the season. The others that shared in the podium spoils, so your 6 podium sitters across the 9 races were Bolger, Devenish, Foley, Xeris, and then Pete Savage and Lewis Wedding, the other 2. Final point standings, provisional point standings. We knew that the top 3 were already locked into their finishing position, so Bolger, Devenish and Foley remain unchanged. Xeris managed to hold down 4th place despite not being able to make it tonight. Osrob made a nice late charge, vaulted his way up to 5th overall in the running order, so that's a really, really good solid result for him, considering he's also the leader and the victor of the Silver Cup trophy as well, with Pete Savage and Lewis Wedding separated by a point in the end, 6th and 7th place. Lime Mitch was the second Silver Cup man home, 8th overall. At the end of the day, he ended up with 58 points to Osrob's 71 in terms of the overall standings. He finished a single solitary point ahead of Brendan Ross in 9th, and then the third Silver Cup man in the standings was Luke Joyner, who got home in 10th place by a point over Aaron Thomas, and then there was another point further back to Termo. So a lot of 1-point separations in the back half of the top 10 once everything was said and done from a driver's perspective. Teams Championship, the top 4 rather, as they entered the night, that's precisely where they finished. So Gravel Shed and Wedding Crashers were locked into 1 and 2. Team Antara by Loose Simsport have prevailed over BC Racing by the tune of 11 points, having come into the night with a 1-point advantage. And then the 5th place team was the Matt Harvey Repair and Tune squad, the BMW M6s of Aaron Thomas and Lime Mitch, getting home for 5th. At the end of the day, they were 15 points in arrears of the BC Racing Vipers. And to round out the team standings, ZMB Racing, Bentley 4 Motorsport, R Motorsport, 888 Race Engineering, and Lone Wolf and Cubs and HDS Racing tied on 24 points apiece for 10th and 11th. But when we have a look back through the order, the highest place finish has gone to Greg Turra. So that means that the 24 points that he has accrued is good enough, I believe, as we look down the order, to see where some HDS Racing for Mitch Hathaway, for BDS's, he was outside the 10 on every occasion. No, in actual fact, Mitch Hathaway is going to hang on. He has a 6th place finish to Greg Turra's best of 7th. So on a count back, that actually goes to HDS Racing overall. So that's a little late sting in the tail for Greg Turra, just falling a 1 position short of being able to tie that up and get an outright 10th for the Lone Wolf and Cubs squad, gents.
Yeah, very close margins on the tail end of the field there. It goes to show that even up to the very last race, there's still movement. And very, very sore for Rossi, for Brendan Ross, unfortunately, with the double penalty today resulting in his disqualification, losing out a few positions in the championship right at the very end. That sucks. That really sucks.
Yeah, that stung.
Yeah, heart goes out to Rossi, but he took it in good spirits. And he had, up until that point, he was having a great race tonight. But really, you can't take anything away from the top 2 in the championship, Will Devenish and Steve Bolger. We've said it the entire season. They have just basically been in a class of their own. And even when they've been challenged by other drivers in a particular race, the fact that they've been able to be consistent all season long is what separated them from the remainder of the field.
That's right. Bagsy?
Reflect on the excellent season we've had and an excellent job to Bolger. Really did dominate this season, and a special note to Will Devonish as well. It was a shame we couldn't have it go down to the final race, but some very excellent endurance racing from Will Devonish and good racing through the field by everyone. And it's nice that not really much of a break. We're going straight 2 weeks later into more GT3 action. So if you're looking for GT3 action for the next 2 weeks, you can watch the replays of all these races, especially Monza, probably the best race of this season, and get ready for some quite different racing, some insane sprints, 2 sprints a night, and it's going to be very fun to see these same cars, but in a very different format.
Yeah, certainly.
Just quickly, Nether, before we move on to the sprint series, I want to ask you guys, now that we're at the tail end of the season, what were your favourite racing memories of the GT3 World Challenge this season, just before we move on? Because I think it would be nice to just sort of sit back and reflect on what has been a really, really good season, not just in terms of driving and pace throughout the field, but also the racecraft. And really, the attendance numbers throughout the season has been unbelievably consistent.
I'll let Bagsy go first for that one.
I can't really say anything else but Monza. That was just a crazy, crazy race, and probably the best race I've commentated on in Automobilista Australia. So it's hard to go past that, if I'm honest.
I definitely agree with that. I'll step a bit further back and say Donington Park, I think it was the Wayne was a Spencer train, was holding up Lewis Wedding and Will Devonish throughout the middle of the race. Some great defensive driving. That was one of my highlights of the season, and also the entire Spielberg event. I think that was an absolute hallmark of what GT3 racing should be, and that was one I look back on fondly. What about you, Nether?
Well, I've got a top 3, and in order, it'll be the massive turnout we had for the second race of the season at Curvelo, which was the time that COVID sort of came into be, and we ended up with a 25-car grid, which was absolutely staggering for a 90-minute event. That was highlight number 1. Highlight number 2, as you said, the Wayne was a Spencer train at the Donington event. Just an excellent display of defensive driving, and not something that we've seen for quite some time. I mean, people call me one of the most difficult people to pass in AMS Oz, but that was absolutely sensational to hold some faster guys off for a little bit. Yeah, I've actually been awarded a sticker that says I'm the #1 defensive driving school, so I have to work that into my Porsche Cup livery. But yeah, hands down, Monza is the #1 highlight for this particular season. And before tonight, I'd actually said that I've been fortunate enough to have been broadcasting this for a little while now. This is the 3rd year we've been doing AMS Oz, and the 5th season we've done for endurance racing. And I've been really fortunate to capture quite a number of the really, really good highlights that have happened throughout all of the seasons. Monza now twice. The one that takes the cake has got to be Remembrance Day 2018, which was, again, these are scriptings, finishes that you just can't script. So hats off to the drivers that make it happen, but we've been really, really blessed with some of these finishes that you just can't, just sit back and just go, what on earth just happened after everything finished up.
Amen. And just to finish off as well, Lewis Wedding in the live chat says, "Can we stop bringing up the Wazza train?" So sorry, Lewis.
Yeah, I think we've just struck upon a nerve there. Don't forget, guys, as we said before, the Sprint Series kicks off in 2 weeks. There's the calendar. 14th of July at Okayama is when it all begins for a 6-race calendar finishing up at the back end of September. And just a reminder too, this is what's coming up in the remainder of this week, and then a little bit of a gap till we get to GT3 Sprint Series action in 2 weeks from now. So the rest of the AMS Oz busy week, or busiest week of the year, continues tomorrow. Tune into Endurance Chat Media and have a look at some ATCC Group A action. Then come back over here for Supercars on Thursday, off to Lewis Wedding's Loose 89 channel on Friday for Super 2. My thanks as always to Michael Floodman Zalavari and Josh Bagsy Bags. They've been stellar help throughout the year, and this season could not have gone to air without a really, really great pair of guys to help make this broadcast go along. I've been Steve DeVries, and as always, please drive safely. And we'll see you here on Thursday for Supercars. If you're coming back for GT3, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye for now.